Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 3541, Holly. Within the flaming maple forest lay the Misty River race's territory. Many of the people in the Three Purities stage believed so. As did the young men like Larkin from the Misty River race. But as the Misty River race's leader, Wheeler was sure that this was false. After the former leader's death, Holly designated Wheeler to the open position, telling him that the real master of the flaming maple forest was the motionless flaming maple trees, not the actual members of the Misty River race. These people were merely creatures living in the flaming maple forest and everything they had obtained was bestowed upon them by the forest. If he found any chance to expand the flaming maple forest, Wheeler would seize it without question. But expanding the flaming maple forest was an extremely difficult task. On its south side lay the heavenly thunder plain. If the flaming maple forest extended to that plain, it would only turn to ashes under the powerful thunderbolts. On its east side was the cold land, a place unsuitable for trees to grow. The southwest side remained the most suitable area, meaning that it could expand along the Divine River to its upper reaches. In the past, the flaming maple forest had also expanded in such a way, but at a certain point, it was discovered by the element spirit civilization. The latter then poisoned the southwest soil, making the land toxic across 20 miles. The poisonous land was an insurmountable natural chasm for the flaming maple forest. Any seeds and roots instantly decayed once they drilled into the soil. When the Misty River race attempted to negotiate with the element spirit civilization, they were refused. Since the last leader was killed, they figured that the latter would forbid the expansion of the flaming maple forest. Now that the element spirit civilization took the initiative to mention so, Wheeler had no choice but to accept. Having seen through Wheeler's thoughts, Abner said nothing more and left. Standing up, Wheeler wiped his body dry and turned to Larkin. I'm going to see Holly. The soul interdicting water on the bodies of Zen, Yasamine, and Eastern Emperor Tai dried up and its effect disappeared, allowing the people to withdraw from the other shore. Flamen, Pierce, Auden and the other masters of the Oneness Sky Palace were all aware that it was a moment of great importance, so they waited aside. Elvenia, who had been cultivating, also came over. After waiting for so long, there was no news from the other shore. Of course, everyone was getting anxious. At this point, Zen was the first to retreat from the other shore before waking up immediately. Zen, how is my father? Elvenia asked, taking the first step forward. But as she spoke, Yasamine coughed twice from nearby and woke up as well, followed by Eastern Emperor Tai, Fuxi, the snake goddess, and King Yayan. Madam Yasamine, Eastern Emperor Tai, father. The strong warriors of the Oneness Mountain and the Origin Mountain gathered around. Since Yasamine and Eastern Emperor Tai were trapped, the Oneness Sky Palace lost their mainstay. Many believed that the two had no chance of ever waking up again. But now that the two had returned safe and sound, the strong warriors of the Oneness Sky Palace were all ecstatic. Both Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasamine had been soaked in the Divine River for a long time, leaving them to suffer greatly. Coming back and seeing their families and subordinates safe and sound, they were all happy and excited. The Oneness Sky Palace people were all looking forward to being taken back to the Bloom Divine Province by Eastern Emperor Tai. Several elders of the Oneness Mountain proposed the idea immediately. The Bloom Divine Province served as a foundation for the Oneness Sky Palace. The cities at the foot of the 7 mountains and by the Clear Lake were all closely linked to the Oneness Sky Palace. While the Pear Hill treated them very well, many of them still longed to return to the Bloom Divine Province. After a moment of thought, Eastern Emperor Tai refused the request for the time being. While they won the Battle of the Pear Hill, the era was far from those in the past. Both the Nihility race and the Element Spirit civilization had the means to descend to this world. The time when only one eternal realm warrior could protect an entire race was gone forever. If Eastern Emperor Tai brought his people back to the Bloom Divine Province, he might be unable to protect the Oneness Sky Palace and in turn destroy the Bloom Diving Province. Now the superpowers that supported the finale way were gathering in the Pear Hill. It merely wasn't the right time to return. After Eastern Emperor Tai and Yasemin had a brief meeting with the people from Oneness Sky Palace, they returned to the other shore again. The flaming maple forest was clearly far from a safe place. The snake goddess, Fuxi and Zen had been forcibly pulled to the other shore before, after all, so Zen had to take them out of there at any cost. After everyone managed to return to the other shore, they followed Zen. When moving across the open area by the Divine River, they could all feel a strong vibration from the ground. Huge creatures were surely approaching. Squeak, it seems troublesome, said King Ianuan. It was well aware of the Misty River race's personality, it knew they would refuse to give up. It wasn't only Zen and his companions that felt uneasy. The rest of the Eternal Realm warriors and the members of the alien races all seemed upset. The tremors from the ground indicated that the Misty River race made a great move. Soon, Abner appeared, a few non-human creatures following behind him. These warriors stared at Zen as though they were looking upon a corpse. Abner, in particular, was wearing a strange smile as he proceeded. I see they've found some powerful reinforcement, Zen muttered to himself with a sneer. Boom, boom, boom. As the tremors grew closer, many members of Misty River race appeared, covered in bronze powder. Their race didn't have many people, and it seemed that most of them had already come. Bang, bang, with his black and cyan skin, Wheeler stood before Zen showing no sign of contempt. Instead, his demeanor seemed ready for a negotiation. You're no match for the element spirit civilization, he said. If you surrender obediently and leave the flaming maple forest, you will not have to suffer any pain or trouble. I can also guarantee that these people will be safe and sound. He pointed at King Yayan, Fuxi, and the rest as he spoke. To him, the conditions he just proposed were already very generous. If Zen was sensible, he would agree. But Zen merely curled his lips at the other. Did the element spirit civilization tell you to say that? They've said the same many times. Zen figured that the power he used to kill Norris was enough to intimidate the Misty River race. His provocation made it impossible for the Misty River race to attack. There was only one possibility remained. The element spirit civilization asked the Misty River race to make a move by promising them great benefits. What do you think? Wheeler pressed again. I've never compromised and I don't intend to do so now, Zen said in return, shrugging his shoulders. Regret washed over Wheeler's face. Then you will never even get a chance to compromise. You'll die and lie in the flaming maple forest forever, and your flesh and blood will become nourishment for the forest. Can you kill me by yourself? Zen asked, his voice lowered. That's too easy for Master Wheeler. If you die here, no one will bother to bury your body. When Master Wheeler tears you to pieces, you'll learn to not be so stubborn. The crowd began clamoring upon witnessing Zen's arrogance. But Wheeler merely shook his head and admitted, I can't defeat you. The words had the rest of the Misty River race swallow their words and go silent. Even the rest of the Eternal Realm warriors and the many races in the forest's open space were rather surprised. It was a shock to hear Wheeler admit that he couldn't defeat this human being. But then Wheeler took a step back, as if to make way for something. But he should be able to do that for me. Boom, boom, boom. A great figure of over 100 feet tall emerged from the forest. The man was dark all over, staring at Zen, his eyes gleaming with ferocity. Chapter 3542, The Confrontation of Two Strong Warriors. Suddenly, the open space in the forest had become very quiet, and everyone's focus shifted towards the gigantic black body. That's not the leader of the Misty River race. Who was that guy? Someone asked in a soft voice. I don't know. I haven't seen him before. But how could this be? His aura is much stronger than Wheeler's. Holly hadn't shown up in the flaming maple forest for many years. That was why the newcomers had no idea who he was. However, when some of the longtime residents realized that it was him, they immediately knew that things were about to get extremely troublesome. Holly really came out. What condition did the element spirit civilization offer to summon him? Are they that desperate? It's been such a long time. Things are about to get rowdy. In the Misty River race, Holly held a revered reputation. Since he had personally come out to deal with the situation, it meant that it really was a big deal. The creatures and Eternal Realm warriors that had been staying in the flaming maple forest for a long time had sharp and experienced eyes. When they saw how Zen dealt with Norris with such ease, they discerned that he did have the qualifications to contend against Wheeler. However, Holly was a different kind of beast. Even with the surprising strength that Zen had displayed, they still didn't think that he had a chance against Holly. On the other hand, they also didn't expect that Wheeler would directly turn to Holly without even fighting Zen. At the moment, Zen already felt a little uncomfortable being on the receiving end of Holly's hostile stares. He looked back with his own fierce gaze and slightly smiled. What's the matter? Aren't you going to persuade me first? Zen asked indifferently. No, Holly answered with a sneer. I won't do such a boring thing. His voice was so dry and hoarse, like the sound of breaking withered crisp leaves. I like fighting, Holly continued. It's just a pity that I've become too powerful that no one wanted to fight me anymore. But finally, a worthy opponent came. Holly looked at Zen with a piercing gaze. There's no way I'll let this opportunity pass. Holly's entire body was pitch black. However, his eyes shone brightly, like a pair of shimmering stars in the dark sky. As the words came out of his mouth, everyone could feel his aggressive fighting spirit spreading out. Anyone who made eye contact with him would feel the rapid circulation of their blood, the acceleration of their heartbeat, and the heat coming off from their eyes. This was the natural instinct of fearing for one's own life. Even Zen felt his heart pounding. However, for him, it was more of a thrill than fear. There was an inexplicable desire arising from his inner being. He then turned around and asked his companions, will you leave the other shore or stay here? The most logical and safest thing to do was to leave the other shore. Fuxi, the snake goddess, and the others knew that Zen was facing a life and death kind of test in the Three Purities stage. Obviously, it would be extremely difficult and dangerous, so they could actually leave before it was too late. However, without hesitation, the snake goddess answered on behalf of them, we'll stay here with you. The others nodded in agreement, and showed no intention of backing out. They had risked their lives to fight for their current strength and status. Besides, they were all confident in Zen's strength. Enough talking, Holly said in a low voice. Crash! With a light stomp of his foot, the whole open space in the forest trembled violently. As he gathered all his energy into his arms and hands, his muscles suddenly bulged. Then, the rest of his body also swelled up. The muscles on his shoulders almost enveloped his head. Let me see your strongest physical form, human, he said. My strongest physical form? You're already looking at it, Zen said with a straight face. His physical body was given by the ancestry-level bloodline, and there was nothing that he could do about it. What? Holly couldn't help but chuckle loudly. If that's the case, then you've already lost. As soon as he finished speaking, his black figure suddenly disappeared and quickly flashed in front of Zen. As a rule, no Theurgy could be used within the flaming maple forest, which meant Holly wouldn't be able to use the grand teleportation technique. However, his physical speed was so fast that it seemed like he teleported himself to reach in front of Zen. So fast. Zen's eyes widened as he was caught off guard. There was no time to think, so he just instinctively took a step backward. Bang! Just a split second after, Holly's huge fist smashed onto the ground. A moment after, everyone saw the crater that appeared on the ground. Fortunately for Zen, he was able to dodge at the last second. If not, his bones would have been crushed by that impact. However, Holly was just getting started. Zen immediately saw the look on his face, saying that he might not get lucky the next time. With that, Holly instantly disappeared again and launched several successive punches. Crash! Boom! Several holes quickly appeared on the ground and on the trunks of the trees. Zen and Holly seemed to transform into two dancing shadows that flew everywhere. Not everyone could track their movements with their naked eyes. Within a few minutes, the ground within the radius of 100 miles was in chaos. It was like small meteorites and asteroids rained on it. However, the roots of the flaming maple trees were all over the forest. They just absorbed Holly's power and continued to maintain the inner stability of the forest. Boom, boom, Holly continued to shower Zen with his massive punches, but the latter hadn't thrown a single strike yet. The two maintained a distance of several feet, and it didn't seem that they became exhausted. I have to admit, your speed is fascinating. Holly's eyes revealed the sincerity of his remark. But the result is so obvious if you just keep dodging and running. Crash! Boom! Holly launched another barrage of powerful attacks. The truth was Zen was still just relying on his body's instinctive reaction to evade Holly's attacks. However, with Holly's quick-wittedness and familiarity of the place, he eventually forced Zen into a corner. It was too late when Zen realized that his back was against three tall flaming maple trees, and this time, it wouldn't be easy to get out of that spot. Dang it, I was careless. There's no other way. I need to go up. Zen's feet sank on the ground as he exerted his strength on his lower body. He used his legs as a spring so that he could rush upwards. However, Holly had all things calculated. When he drove Zen into that corner, he already expected what he would try to do. The moment Zen's feet left the ground, Holly rushed straight and threw a massive punch on his chest. Crash! A great force exploded in Zen's chest, shattering his bones. His entire body was smashed and embedded into the trunks of the flaming maple trees behind him. For all your arrogance before, that's the best that you could do. Holly stared at him with a disappointed face. Well, it's over. You still got to give the human some props. His body didn't even explode after taking a direct hit from Holly. Holly's just too powerful. End of discussion. With Holly's physical strength, there was no doubt that he would stand at the peak of the Grand Pure Realm. However, he was afraid that the Element Spirit civilization and the Nihility race would join hands to kill him. Thus, walking out of the flaming maple forest was not an option for him. Meanwhile, Fuxi, the snake goddess, and the others fell silent as they nervously stared at Zen's current situation. There was no way that they could join a vicious battle of physical strength, so they were left with no choice but to place their hopes and trust on him. Just when Holly turned away, Zen's body, which was still embedded in the trunks of the trees, slightly moved. He coughed and spat a mouthful of blood. However, the blood quickly bounced from the ground and returned to his mouth. When the creatures watching saw this scene, they were shocked and confused at the same time. Soon after, Zen seemed to have regained his consciousness. I apologize. You haven't enjoyed yourself to the fullest yet. I should not fall down that quickly, right? As Zen spoke, he slammed both his arms against the flaming maple trees to push himself out. Then, like a ferocious shooting star, he struck his head on Holly. Crash! Caught off guard by Zen's sudden attack, Holly was hit hard. However, his head was indestructible. If it was someone weaker than him, his head might have instantly exploded into pieces. While Holly was still in a daze, Zen took advantage of the opportunity and launched his counterattack. With that, countless fist shadows emerged and poured on Holly's body like torrential rain. Chapter 3543, Nurture. Zen's body, strengthened by the ancestry-level bloodline, displayed an astonishing explosive power. As each punch landed on Holly's body, power waves burst in all directions while the flaming maple trees that surrounded them swayed crazily. Boom, 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 boom. The warriors from various races and the Eternal Realm warriors all hid behind the flaming maple trees as they watched the battle. They were all shocked at the sight of the intense battle. The power of this tall human is so terrifying. Yes, Wheeler was right in his judgment. This human is stronger than him. But no matter how powerful this person is, he still cannot hurt Holly, they talked among themselves. During the long time that the Misty River race had controlled the flaming maple forest, many races wanted to eradicate them and had devised various plans. The most powerful ones among them were naturally the Nihility race and the Element Spirit civilization. Because of their unique form, the Element Spirit civilization couldn't enter the flaming maple forest to fight. However, with a huge amount of resources of the three purities stage in their hands, they were capable of using special methods. Once upon a time, the Element Spirit civilization created a powerful dark blood puppet. This puppet was personally created by the Ice Spirit, consuming a lot of precious resources of the Element Spirit civilization. Its strength exceeded that of any ordinary member of the Misty River race. However, Holly had effortlessly smashed it into little pieces only in the first round of the fight. Since then, the Element Spirit civilization realized that they should never try to attack the Misty River race in the flaming maple forest ever again. The Nihility race had also made similar attempts. Because they knew Holly was powerful and was the most difficult to deal with, they had targeted him from the very beginning. The Grand Master of Heaven created a clone of himself and hid it in the golden body pool of the Supreme Pure Realm. After a few years, the clone went to the flaming maple forest alone to challenge Holly. The Nihility race set up a more challenging contest with Holly than the Element Spirit civilization. The clone of the Grand Master of Heaven relied on its excellent bodily movements and endured fighting for several rounds. However, even though the clone was extremely fast, its attacking method was inefficient to break through Holly's defense. In the end, only a single punch from Holly brutally tore it straight into defeat. From then on, no one had foolishly dared to challenge him. Holly usually defeated his opponents with one blow. Most of the warriors from the various races and the Eternal Realm warriors thought that there was no need for him to strike a second time to kill his opponent, but in his fight with Zen, the unexpected occurred. Zen had not only withstood Holly's first blow but also possessed combat power to counterattack. However, such a counterattack was in vain. Holly didn't dodge. Receiving the hits from Zen's fist, he was forced to retreat. His legs plowed 2 ditches on the ground, but his face didn't change at all. There was evident mockery in his eyes. Your body is tough yet your strength is too weak, Holly said proudly, shaking his head. Realizing that the attack at this level was useless on Holly, Zen stopped and said, "Do you hear that? You are too weak." Zen's words confused Holly. Who was he talking to? Wasn't he alone? Of course he didn't know that Zen was talking to the ancestry-level bloodline. Soon, Zen felt the blood in his body rolling like waves. The ancestry-level bloodline knew that energy could not be used in the flaming maple forest, so it surged in a strange way to protest. It sent a special message to Zen through its emotion. I could become stronger, it seemed to declare. The emotion was inexpressible in words, but Zen deciphered it. Since you admit that you are weak, you must also understand the fate of the weak, Holly said as he opened his arms. Of course, I understand, replied Zen, but you have to wait for a moment. He smiled teasingly. Zen began to chant the illusion-breaking rune. This triggered the attack of flaming maple forest, causing several maple leaves to light up and shoot towards him, but as soon as he finished speaking, his body suddenly disappeared. Just as before, Zen was gone before the maple leaves exploded. Fuxi, the snake goddess, King Yayan, Eastern Emperor Tai, and Yasamine all joined in chanting the illusion-breaking rune and instantly escaped from the other shore. Their action caused a more violent response from the maple leaves. Boom, 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 boom. Some of the maple leaves exploded in front of Holly, but he didn't move, remaining unafraid of them. Wait for a moment, murmured Holly. He must have run away. They can't escape. I'll find a member of the gear race and drag them back here, exclaimed Abner as he came forward. Norris was a member of the gear race, and pulling the creatures from the chaos back to the other shore was one of their Thurgies. Moreover, similar Thurgies on the Three Purities stage were not exclusive to the members of the gear race. It was easy for the element spirit civilization to seek help from others. He asked me to wait for him. He will be back, Holly said coldly as he looked at Abner. Master Holly, these rats will definitely hide in the chaos and dare not to return. I will drag them back before their shadows disappear. Holly threw Abner a deadly look before he could finish his words. Abner didn't dare continue, his legs trembling as he took a few steps back. When he retreated to Wheeler's side, Wheeler sneered, if you have said one more word, you wouldn't have had the chance to stand here. Holly doesn't need you to tell him what to do. Holly stood there motionless. The atmosphere turned gloomy in the open space where the warriors of various races and Eternal Realm warriors gathered. At Holly's presence, no one dared to look for treasures in the Divine River. Everyone waited by Wheeler's side. At the Pear Hill, the faces of the Snake Goddess, Fuxi, Yasamine, and the Eastern Emperor Tai had darkened after they returned to the Source World. Having learned from previous experience, they were aware that even if they returned to the chaos, they still wouldn't be safe. The four of them looked at Zen. He looked at his body and warned them, everyone, take a step back. Zen's belly suddenly swelled into the shape of a large ball. The temperature in his huge belly increased rapidly, almost like that of a furnace. Even Eastern Emperor Tai, who was standing slightly further, could only retreat as the heat became unbearable. The snake goddess approached the Holy Soul Realm warriors around them. She quickly dispersed the warriors and led them out of the palace. Not long after they retreated, the palace walls collapsed because of the extreme temperature. A small dazzling sun rose from the ruins of the palace, and at the center of the sun was a black dot. As there, a freak in Zen's belly. Elvinia looked at the scene from a distance. I don't know what's in there, but it must be something that can make him stronger. Eastern Emperor Tai replied, also shocked by the odd sight. On the other hand, Fuxi and the snake goddess looked very serious. They had seen Zen strengthen his body many times. He had completely changed out of human form after several transformations, so they were calmer than the others upon witnessing such a scene. This time, it seemed difficult to deal with Holly as Zen had made a greater move to strengthen his body. Swoosh! Floating in the air, Zen felt that the ancestry-level bloodline in his body was consistently flowing towards his stomach. He stared at the black dot in confusion. Is this a pill? He thought to himself. Zen faintly understood that Holly was very powerful. If the ancestry-level bloodline wanted to continue strengthening his body, it was to use more complicated methods. However, the thought of nurturing a pill in his belly while everyone gazed still left Zen speechless. Chapter 3544, Beaten. The light from the sun-like object glowed for an hour. As the light faded away, Zen's round belly also gradually returned to normal. However, the pill was still in Zen's stomach. Just as Zen wondered about what the ancestry-level bloodline would do with the pill suddenly melted into Zen's body. Zen suddenly felt like there were thousands of needles wandering about his meridians at lightning speed. The pain made Zen's face darken. It was so excruciating that he couldn't help but let out a low growl. The pain gradually dissipated when the pill completely fused into Zen's body, but at the same time, Zen also obtained a strange body. The skin covering his body had turned blue and translucent. His muscles, blood vessels, and even bones had turned into some kind of extremely solid crystals. Among all, the color of his bones was the darkest, while the color of his muscles was the second darkest. Zen raised his hand and examined it carefully. His dark blue fingernails were shining, and there was a strong, heavy force circulating around his limbs and bones. "How are you feeling now?" asked Foxy. "Good, it feels like I've opened up a new world," Zen replied with a smile. "Are you sure you can defeat Holly?" The snake goddess could not help but ask. This was the most crucial issue after all. Zen shook his head. "I'm not sure." The Thurgi and the power the ancestry-level bloodline gave to Zen were extremely unstable. Although they were very strong, it was difficult for Zen to gauge how strong they were, so he naturally could not be sure about whether or not he could defeat Holly. Nevertheless, considering the nature of the ancestry-level bloodline which could practically construct everything, in case it intended to let Zen defeat an opponent, it would definitely provide him with enough strength to do so. "Then shall we go back to the other shore now?" Eastern Emperor Tai asked solemnly. "Yes, let's go," Zen replied affirmatively and then landed on the ruins of the palace. He then summoned the truth of godly way and returned directly to the other shore. Eastern Emperor Tai, Yasamine, Fuxi, the snake goddess, and King Yayan were all people who had experienced many battles. They all returned to the other shore with Zen without any hesitation in the slightest. In the flaming maple forest, Holly was still standing there like an iron tower, staring ahead motionlessly. The members of the various races, as well as the Eternal Realm warriors waiting under the flaming maple trees in the distance, were all whispering among themselves. "Almost 4 hours have passed. They're courting death if they come back. Those humans aren't stupid. It's just a waste of time to wait like this." "Shut up." Larkin stepped forward and scolded. Although Larkin also felt that it was impossible for Zen and his companions to come back, he still had to uphold Holly's prestige and stop these people from gossiping. The other members of the Misty River race were still waiting alongside Holly. All of them looked solemn. At this moment, a huge creature suddenly appeared not far from Holly. Compared to his state before he withdrew from the other shore, it was obvious from his current state that Zen had undergone a great change. The huge, translucent, blue crystal figure was completely different from how Zen looked like before. "Are you ready?" Holly asked. He remembered Zen's aura, so he immediately recognized that this huge creature was the human boy just now. He did not make any comment about it, but he was, in fact, also a little baffled to see the mystical changes that had occurred in Zen's body. "Yes," replied Zen, "you've wasted my time, and that makes you more sinful. Then, you can go to perdition now." As Holly spoke, his huge fist was already swung towards Zen's head. Zen stretched out his crystal-like right hand, and the two huge forces soon collided with a sharp clang. The ground under Zen's feet instantly sank, and almost half of his body was forced into the ground. Nevertheless, he managed to withstand Holly's attack. Blocked. He blocked it. This is the first time someone has managed to block Holly's attack. Does that human really have such a strong body? Previously, the fact that Zen was still alive and kicking after taking the blow from Holly had already shocked all the warriors present here. Now, he could block Holly's attack right after he came back. In their astonishment, their eyes had grown as wide as saucers. This meant that Zen had the power to fight against Holly. A trace of amazement also flashed in Holly's eyes. He began to fight seriously, flinging punch after punch towards Zen. Boom, boom, boom. Although his attack speed was not fast, his incessant attacks landed at a stable pace all along. Every time Zen took a blow, he would be forced to take a step back. The ground under him was constantly shaking as if there was an earthquake. But there was something interesting in this whole situation. Those flaming maple trees remained firm on the ground. They were neither breaking nor collapsing despite the fact that the ground was quaking. "Zen's body has become stronger again," the snake goddess said astounded. "I really want to know, what kind of bloodline has he fused with that he can become so powerful in such a short time?" Eastern Emperor Tai said with a tone that was full of appreciation and curiosity. If they were to face Holly, they probably could not withstand even 1/10 of the power in Holly's punch. Zen steadily retreated. His hands acted like two pieces of shields that blocked all Holly's attacks. After blocking more than 30 punches in a row, Zen had once again arrived in front of the 3 adjacent flaming maple trees. This time, he did not choose to escape. Taking advantage of the moment Holly threw out a punch, Zen leapt back, and his legs stepped on the trunk of a flaming maple tree. Using the tree trunk as his footing, he propelled his body forward and pounced straight on Holly. Not only did he dodge Holly's punch, but he even spread out his arms and used both of them to launch an even fiercer attack towards Holly. Boom, 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 boom. In the blink of an eye, Zen had launched 8 punches. 8 deep dents appeared on Holly's broad chest, and 8 huge fist marks protruded from his back. At this moment, Zen and Holly were equally stunned. Generally speaking, receiving such powerful attacks, the attacked person would surely be thrown backward. As they flew back, they could offset a considerable amount of power that they received. Now, Holly just stood motionless in his original spot. That meant he had forcefully taken the power of Zen's 8 punches. However, there was nothing under his feet that could anchor him to the ground. It ought to be impossible for him to stand still and continue to receive Zen's attack head-on. Was this a special theurgy his body possessed? Zen was baffled. An impressive attack, Holly praised after spitting out a mouthful of black blood. Holly felt like there was another force that fixed him on the spot when Zen threw his punches. He was just like a target that could not move. Despite Holly's impressive strength, his body would inevitably be injured upon directly receiving those punches. Larkin, Wheeler, and the other members of the Misty River race were all watching this scene in horror. They almost could not believe their eyes. The undefeatable, almost invincible Holly was actually being beaten by a human and got injured to the point he spat out blood. Right now, nothing could be more frightening than this in this world. The warriors from other races and the Eternal Realm warriors also gasped in astonishment. They were both shocked and ecstatic. It would be great news for them if this human kid could really kill Holly. How about taking a few more punches? Zen did not hesitate. With a slight shake of his body, fierce fist radiance was shot towards Holly from all directions. Boom, 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 boom. The punches created a series of dull thuds. If one looked carefully, they would see that after each punch hit Holly, there was a slight tremor in his body. It was as if the space had been disrupted. Chapter 3545, The Second Form. The space at Holly's front and back was misplaced, and he became caught in an invisible wall. He couldn't retreat, neither could he advance, nor dodge. He was forced to bear the brunt of Zen's fists head-on. In the forest glade, some Eternal Realm warriors who had the sharpest eyes were able to see what was unfolding before them. The astonishment in their eyes intensified. Did the human just utilize a space theurgy? One of the creatures questioned in utter shock. The phenomenon of overlapped spaces was quite similar to that created by many of the space theurgies. However, they knew using space theurgy involved the facilitation of energy, which was forbidden in this area. If Zen had used a space theurgy, the maple leaves in the flaming maple forest would already have launched their attack on him. It was common knowledge that these maple leaves possessed a miraculous feature. They would pursue their targets with a relentless speed to the very ends of the world. In the past, someone had used a theurgy at the edge of the flaming maple forest and had triggered the attack of the maple leaves before fleeing at full speed. About 30 seconds later, though, the maple leaves had easily caught up with their target and exploded. Others had used the spatial transference at the edge of the flaming maple forest to cross a great distance in a single breath. However, the maple leaves still had caught up with them within a mere 30 seconds. It appeared that the distance had no effect on the leaves' pursuit time. Up till now, the only known way to avoid the maple leaves' attack was to leave the other shore. It seemed that it was virtually impossible for the maple leaves to reach beyond the other shore. It didn't look like a space theurgy, another creature commented, shaking his head. It was a unique wave of power. One so formidable that it was able to manipulate the space in an unexpected manner. I didn't know the human race possessed someone of that genius. Another warrior shouted in utter shock. At this time, an Eternal Realm warrior who had just come here from the Grand Plain stage said, he must be the famous Zen. Both the Nihility race and the Element Spirit civilization have offered tempting rewards to recruit him, but he refused them both. Zen was famous in the Grand Plain stage. All the forces coveted his great potential and extraordinary talent. When the ensemble heard of Zen's background, their eyes soon filled with envy. In addition to the indigenous races that inhabited in the Three Purities stage, the Nihility race and the Element Spirit race were regarded as the strongest. With the protection of these two forces, many things would become greatly simplified. Bang, bang, bang. Under Zen's continuous assault, Holly found almost no chance to strike back. Dents constantly formed on the surface of his dark black body. Zen's fists had such formidable force that the punches penetrated through his body, causing his back to bulge. It wasn't long before Holly's body was raked with wounds. His arms and legs became contorted and misshapen, and he was powerless to support his body. However, the space walls Zen had created with his attacks fixed Holly to the spot. It wasn't until Zen withdrew his fists that Holly finally collapsed to his knees. Holly's large, distended body slumped forward to the ground like a heap of mud. He looked miserable. A deafening silence roared through the air of the flaming maple forest. Wheeler and the other warriors from Misty River Race stared blankly at Holly lying on the ground, utterly bewildered. They found it difficult to comprehend what was unfolding before their eyes, and they wondered if it was a dream. Could Holly have been defeated so easily? On the other hand, Fuxi, the snake goddess, Yasamine, and Eastern Emperor Tai all heaved a collective sigh of relief. Zen's victory was really no surprise to them. Even the mighty Holly had been defeated by Zen. They couldn't help but wonder at Zen's actual strength. The warriors from the other races in the forest were all overjoyed at Zen's victory. Upon defeating Holly, Zen would become the new ruler of the Flaming Maple Forest. In fact, regardless of who would rule over the Flaming Maple Forest next, they believed that things could only be better than when the Misty River Race was in power. They had all been milked dry by the members of the Misty River Race, and they hated them to the core. However, the silence only lingered for a few seconds. To everyone's astonishment, Holly's prone figure stirred on the ground, and suddenly he began moving again. A red round light about an inch wide glowed in Holly's right hand. Following that, a band of red light emanated up from the red glowing orb to Holly's shoulders, then it wrapped his chest, neck, spine, back, legs. Before long, the glowing light seemed to have consumed Holly's whole body. Buzz! Suddenly, something miraculous began unfolding. It was as if someone began blowing air into Holly's shrunken body. The parts that had caved in from Zen's punches quickly swelled up like inflating balloons. The wounds all over his body recovered, and his contorted limbs assumed their normal shapes after being wrapped by the glowing red light. Crack, 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 with a series of crisp sounds, Holly's body completely healed from all injuries. Seeing that Holly now lay on the ground unscathed as if from a dream, Wheeler became so excited that he suddenly raised his arms and roared, "Holly!" The other warriors of the Misty River Race instantly followed suit and shouted, "Holly! Holly! Holly! Holly!" The deafening cheers of the Misty River Race echoed throughout the flaming maple forest. Even the forest seemed to react to their exuberance as the leaves on the maple trees rustled in response. Those from the other races were overwhelmed by the unison of the roars, and none of them could find the words to say. Amidst the roars of his kindred, Holly slowly climbed to his feet. With a trace of regret in his eyes he took a deep breath and said, "What a pity that I'll have to fight you in my strongest form." The Misty River Race was known to possess extremely strong physical bodies. According to their unique talents, the stronger their bodies grew, the darker their skin became. The average members of the Misty River Race had bodies that shone with a golden color. Upon reaching a certain level, their bodies turned bronze. If one's physical body reached an extreme level of cultivation, it would then be in the same dark cyan color as Wheeler's, which was believed to represent their limit. Wheeler had always regarded Holly as having reached a higher plane, hoping that he could surpass his limit and cultivate to Holly's level. Unfortunately, even though he had tried all sorts of methods, his body had reached its limits of strength and didn't improve any further. Only Holly knew that the secret source of his extraordinary strength was the mysterious scorched arm he had found by chance. After absorbing that arm, his physical body had undergone an astonishing metamorphosis. The arm had easily helped him surpass the limits of his race and attain a new level. He had always been curious as to who the owner of that arm had been. Since it had such a tremendous effect, the owner of the arm must have been a truly powerful being. But who possessed the strength to cut an arm from such a formidable creature? The awe in Holly's mind grew every time he contemplated on it. Nonetheless, he was aware that the source of the secret lay at the uppermost reaches of the Divine River, which was in the Jade Pure Realm, in the deepest part of the Three Purities stage. Just like the other races in Stage 33, Holly had always held the entering of the Jade Pure Realm as his ultimate goal. Therefore, he never revealed his true strength, hoping to use it at a more critical moment. He would never have expected he would be forced to use it while fighting a human today. Whoosh! Having spoken, Holly suddenly stretched forth one hand and grabbed Zen's arm. With a flip, he hurled Zen to the ground, pinning him down. Then, the band of red light covering his body congregated near his right arm. Boom! He launched a massive punch. An immense wave of power pulsed forth from him, spreading through the ground. Even the densely interwoven roots of the flaming maple trees failed to dampen the heavy vibrations. The creatures standing close to the flaming maple trees could keep a semblance of balance, while those who stood on the open ground were all sent reeling to the earth. As waves of power spread, they found it virtually impossible to regain their footing. Boom! Holly landed a second punch. A huge gaping crater appeared beneath Holly and Zen, devouring them in a cloud of dust. Larger tremors of power radiated from them, rocking everyone with the force of an earthquake. Boom! A third punch. A massive area suffered severe tremors like rolling waves, and the flaming maple trees nearest the epicenter were razed to the ground. Even the members of the Misty River race were cast aside by the earth-shattering vibrations. Chapter 3546, Going in Circles. The shaking of the earth lasted for a while before it finally stopped. Then, everyone saw that a body was thrown out of the deep pit. It was none other than Zen. The blue transparent crystal on the surface of Zen's body showed countless cracks that came in various sizes and extended inward. Even his dark blue bones also had cracks. As he received the full impacts of Holly's heavy punches, his body wasn't able to withstand them anymore. The warriors of various races all fell silent as they witnessed the crushing impact of the extent of Holly's strength. Among the creatures that were spectating, there were actually some spies sent by the Nihility race and the Element Spirit civilization. Earlier, they were planning to report that the flaming maple forest might change its ruler. However, the sudden turn of events made the situation more complicated. Although it was a unanimous idea that Holly would be unbeatable, seeing his true strength with their own eyes still rendered them speechless. It went beyond their wildest expectations. Ha ha! Finally, after walking out of the deep pit, Holly approached Wheeler while gesturing something. Wheeler quickly understood what he meant, so he immediately took out a basin of soul-interdicting water from the divine river and splashed it on Zen's crumbling body. This way, even if Zen regained his consciousness, he would not be able to escape. After Wheeler was done with his job, Holly walked over and stared down at Zen's body, which was covered with countless cracks. No one can challenge my physical strength. You may be an extraordinary warrior in the three purities stage, but you're still nothing in front of me. Then, he raised his foot and stepped on Zen's left leg. He continued to exert his force that instantly increased and enlarged the cracks on Zen's leg. Crack, crash, Zen's leg exploded, turning into thousands of pieces that scattered on the ground. Seeing this scene, the snake goddess, Fuxi, and the others couldn't help but twitch their eyes and bite their lips. After 2 rounds of strengthening, Zen's body still failed to withstand and endure Holly's attacks. If he died here today, all of his efforts in his journey on the other shore would go to waste. This is a mistake after all. Zen's life is much more important than mine and the Oneness Sky Palace. Eastern Emperor Tai regretted the fact that Zen needed to suffer just to save his life. He was deeply frustrated and couldn't help but blame himself. Although Yasmin didn't say anything, it was evident in her face that she had the same thoughts. For them, Zen seemed to be their last hope, and the only person that could possibly complete the finale way. Now that he fell because of going out of his way to save them, they felt that it was not worth it. With all the thoughts and emotions that were surging, the snake goddess didn't say anything and just looked at Zen with a serious expression. She still refused to believe that it was the end for Zen. He showed them several miracles before, and she knew more than anyone that Zen was the last person to accept such kind of fate. Crash! Holly stomped on Zen's right leg and immediately shattered it into countless pieces of blue crystals. He wasn't finished yet. He raised his foot again, and this time, aimed for Zen's body. However, when Holly's foot was about to hit Zen's abdomen, Zen finally opened his eyes and stared at Holly with his scarlet eyes. When Holly's eyes locked with Zen's, he instantly felt a shiver crept beneath his skin. He started trembling as if a ghost came back to life to haunt him. With that, he instinctively wanted to kill Zen as soon as possible, so he immediately gathered his strength on his foot and stomped as hard as he could. However, just before he hit Zen's body, a space fluctuation was suddenly released from it. Zen instantly disappeared and Holly's foot hit nothing but the ground. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Since the space fluctuation spread, the flaming maple forest quickly perceived it. Countless maple leaves started circling and lighting up. They flocked like numerous vicious butterflies searching for their prey. Humph, what a foolish move. You just started the final 30 seconds of your life, Holly said with a sneer. The members of the Misty River race, the warriors from various races, and even the Eternal Realm Masters sighed as they looked at the maple leaves. No matter how far they were, how fast they ran, or how hard they tried to hide, these maple leaves would always arrive in 30 seconds and punish the one who violated the rules. Right now, Zen's only chance to escape was to leave the other shore. However, Holly also cut off this means by asking Wheeler to pour the soul-interdicting water of the divine river on Zen's body. Therefore, right now, in the eyes of the crowd, Zen only had 30 seconds left to spare before his tragic death. Within this time, he could only do nothing but struggle desperately until his time was up. For the members of the Misty River race, they liked to appreciate this given time. They enjoyed seeing the warriors from other races and even the Eternal Realm warriors struggle within those 30 seconds, knowing that the end results would still be the same. There were times that the cruel members of the Misty River race forced the creatures of other races and the Eternal Realm warriors to activate their energy in order to enjoy their struggles in the last 30 seconds of their lives. Buzz, buzz. As Zen disappeared, he immediately built a space channel. The maple leaves quickly separated from the flaming maple trees and flew into the sky. What is that brat doing? Is he deliberately attracting many maple leaves? That number of maple leaves are enough to kill him 10 times. Well, it doesn't matter. In the end, only his death will be certain. The maple leaves of the flaming maple forest actually had several magical properties. For one, they would surely catch up with their targets within 30 seconds. Another would be that the damages caused by the explosions of the maple leaves were unstoppable. Even if one used a powerful enchanted barrier or a space channel, it would still be unable to block the damage that was brought by the maple leaves' explosions. As Zen emerged from the space channel, they saw a green light enveloping the surface of his body and his broken legs quickly recovering. He looked back at the maple leaves that were hunting him and entered the space channel again. He drew an invisible path in the entire flaming maple forest, attracting countless maple leaves in the process. Wow, this guy runs so fast. He has gone a lap around the forest in such a short time. Yeah, but it doesn't matter anymore. He only gets 18 seconds left. 15 seconds more. 12 seconds left. Is he not tired yet? Let him be. After all, that's all he can do now. 6 seconds left. 3 seconds before the explosion. Here it comes. Everyone counted precisely, so they knew that they were on track. With that number of maple leaves chasing Zen, no matter where he escaped, the loud sound of the explosion would quickly transmit and reverberate. Boom! Larkin shouted as he cheered for the explosion that everyone was waiting for. However, 30 seconds had already elapsed, but not even a little explosion was heard. On the contrary, what they saw was that Zen emerged in the air. This time, he was flying in the sky and not in the space channel, so they clearly saw more maple leaves that were chasing after him. A large number of maple leaves had accumulated behind him. However, the leaves weren't cutting the gap. They did not stop chasing Zen, but they also couldn't get close to him. Everyone's eyes widened as they saw this scene. Holly was the most shocked. He clenched his fists and yelled, "How is that possible?" Due to his overwhelming anger, a slight energy fluctuation was released from his shoulder. Although the fluctuation was very minimal, it didn't escape from the sense of a maple leaf on a nearby tree. Immediately, it suddenly lit up and rushed towards him. Holly came to his senses and quickly dodged the maple leaf. He struggled so hard just to get away from it. However, exactly after 30 seconds, the maple leaf successfully reached Holly and exploded on his shoulder. Boom! Even though Holly's body had an astonishing defense, the explosion of a single maple leaf still created a crack on the surface of his body. These maple leaves work just fine. Holly gritted his teeth in confusion. What the heck did that human do? Zen continued circling around the forest, attracting more and more maple leaves in the process. So much time had now elapsed, but the maple leaves still weren't even close to catching up with Zen. What the heck? Did he really do something with the maple leaves? This is impossible. This has never happened since ancient times. The power of the maple leaves is absolute. The members of various races and the Eternal Realm warriors were all flabbergasted. What sort of miracle did he do this time? Chapter 3547, Track. At the start, everyone had anxiously counted down the time till Zen's inevitable death, but when the time came, Zen was still alive and well. Fuxi, Eastern Emperor Tai and the others, who had been worried earlier, all heaved sighs of relief. This guy. Fuxi shook his head in awe. Even Eastern Emperor Tai was stunned. We can't rest easy just yet. Danger still looms. King Yayan muttered under its breath, how is it possible that the maple leaves can't catch up to him? What method is he using? The snake goddess carefully studied Zen's movements. The maple leaves in the flaming maple forest do not move normally. The way these maple leaves pass through space is different from what we know, perhaps Zen moves in a similar manner. Does Zen move differently from us? Why can't I figure this out? Fuxi scratched his head. As creatures in the chaos, we are born with limits. It's only natural we can't comprehend, the snake goddess replied wisely. Zen's body must have changed due to obtaining that bloodline. While the snake goddess didn't know exactly how the ancestry-level bloodline worked, she figured it had a lot to do with how Zen was moving now. After all, she observed his performance after he had reached the Eternal Realm. His bloodline's strength might have reached a degree that ordinary people could not understand. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. As Zen zoomed through the air, he suddenly sped up and continued to fly in circles. Then, he landed on the clearing in the forest and walked towards Holly as though nothing had happened. His eyes flashed fiercely with killing intent. As he spoke, his voice rang across the forest. Is this your strongest form? Will you be able to block them? To the others, everything looked strange. Zen didn't walk quickly, in fact, he resembled an old man walking slowly. Yet, he seemed to be closing the gap between him and Holly in seconds. When Holly heard Zen's threat, it suddenly dawned on him why Zen had aroused all those maple leaves. Immediately, he whipped around to retreat towards the depths of the flaming maple forest at high speed, as though a venomous snake was at his heels. As he ran, he heard Zen laughing maniacally. Do you wish to escape? I'll give you 30 seconds. 30 seconds, 27 seconds, 24 seconds. Everyone watched as Zen slowly took steps forward, like some old man struggling to overtake fatigue. Meanwhile, Holly flew through the forest as fast as he could. Despite Zen seemingly taking his time, the distance between the two of them was still rapidly closing. 30 seconds. Does that guy know how the maple leaves move? This is too terrifying. There's no way Holly will make it out of this alive. When Zen first stepped into the picture, everyone regarded him as a mere challenger. However, now, the tables had turned quickly. It was obvious Zen had some unfathomable abilities. 15 seconds, 12 seconds, 9 seconds, 6 seconds. Previously, when the crowd saw the maple leaves fluttering, they didn't understand how the maple leaves moved. It just looked like sometimes they flew fast, and other times they flew quite slowly. Now that Zen took his time with every stride, everyone could see the scene clearly. While it seemed he was moving slowly at the original speed, the span of each step changed. A 1-foot-long space became 1 inch in front of Zen, whereas a distance of 10 feet became just 1 foot. In the last 3 seconds, any place in the world was just a step away to Zen. Even though Holly was by no means slow, Zen's ability to cross distances made Holly look like a turtle. In one more stride, Zen had caught up to Holly. Lightly tapping his shoulder, Zen smiled and said, "You still have 30 seconds left." Then Zen abruptly turned around and headed towards Fuxi and the snake goddess. The flying maple leaves in the sky had originally circled according to Zen's moving track, but now they changed their direction and rushed towards Holly like bees. The first 30 seconds was the time it took for Zen to catch up to Holly. Now, the next 30 seconds was the time it would take for the maple leaves to catch up to him. Previously, Holly held on to the hope that he would be able to escape. However, as he saw the maple leaves swarming towards him, he stopped running. "I only have 30 seconds to live," Holly muttered as he resigned himself to his fate. He had once said that if he offended the flaming maple forest and attracted the attack of the maple leaves, he would not even attempt to run away, since he knew it'd all be in vain. In the end, he decided to face his fate. 18 seconds, 15 seconds, 12 seconds, 9 seconds, 6 seconds, 3 seconds. Zen was quite far away from Fuxi. Again, he walked slowly, but it only took him 30 seconds to close the distance. Finally, he stood next to Fuxi and the snake goddess to watch what would become of Holly. Just then, the maple leaves reached Holly. One by one, they each began to explode. Holly gritted his teeth as he willed his physical body to reach its peak in a last effort to survive. A maple leaf explosion could cause any ordinary person to explode in a cloud of flesh and blood, but for Holly, it only left marks on his skin. However, there were just too many maple leaves. Zen had just built a space channel and ran around, almost activating 1/3 of the maple leaves in the flaming maple forest. No one had been able to infuriate the flaming maple forest to such an extent before, because from the moment one activated the first maple leaf, they usually had only 30 seconds to escape. However, Zen just ignored this. In fact, if he wanted to, he could activate all the maple leaves in the flaming maple forest. Boom, 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 boom. Soon, Holly was completely enveloped in light caused by the exploding maple leaves. The sound of explosions echoed throughout the forest. After more than 30 seconds, the explosions suddenly stopped. When the light faded, everyone glued their eyes to the spot where Holly had been just now. However, to their surprise, there was nothing left, except a blackened patch of earth and a huge hole caused by the explosions. Holly's physical body was completely obliterated by the maple leaves. This was a common occurrence in the flaming maple forest, but many people were still left stunned. A few maple leaves were still whirling around in the air. Since their target had already perished, they circled a few more times, and one by one, exploded into flashes of light. Then, a hush fell over the flaming maple forest. The members of the Misty River race stared at the blackened earth where Holly had stood just moments ago. They were still unwilling to believe that Holly, their strongest warrior, had died. As the leader of the Misty River race, Wheeler was livid. Although Holly wasn't the only strong member of the Misty River race, Wheeler had still relied on him to gain a firm foothold in the flaming maple forest. Now, with Holly gone, this was a huge setback. If the Nihility race and the Element Spirit civilization wanted to defeat Wheeler in the flaming maple forest, it wouldn't be too difficult for them to do that. This meant that the status of the Misty River race was in great peril, and that they were in danger of being annihilated because of what they had done over the years. A piercing coldness crept throughout Wheeler's body, as though he had been stabbed with a blade of ice. Overcome with anger, he was frozen to his spot. Zen, how did you make it? That, even Fuxi was at a loss for words. The snake goddess stared intently at Zen and asked, "Is it your bloodline that gave you this ability?" Zen nodded. "I can sense another path which is very unique. It's a different space, so it's different from the space theurgy we comprehend." As he spoke, he reached out his hand towards a flaming maple tree in the distance. Chapter 3548, Black Limbs. The maple leaves had left the trees of the flaming maple forest. However, it wasn't long before new maple leaves started sprouting on the trees. Zen reached out his hand and gently picked one. He didn't extend his arm, nor did he build a space channel, but he somehow was able to pick a single maple leaf. "Are you able to pick anything?" The snake goddess's eyes lit up excitedly. If Zen was able to harness this mysterious ability, he would become extremely powerful and extremely useful. "No," Zen shook his head, "I can only pick the maple leaves." After he took the terrifying punches from Holly, he was left almost in a coma. In an attempt to protect himself, he managed to activate the space theurgy to narrowly avoid Holly, completely relying on the instinct of the ancestry-level bloodline. Upon activating the theurgy, the ancestry-level bloodline gifted him with this miraculous ability. The instant he gathered his wits, Zen was shocked to see so many maple leaves chasing after him. However, he noticed that the maple leaves flew very slowly. Moreover, it seemed as though the maple leaves followed a certain path. To his surprise, he too was on this same path. Once he realized this, everything became simple. Others thought it was incomprehensible, but to Zen, it was simple. Whenever someone released energy in the flaming maple forest, the maple leaves would come to life and would build a specific path that led to them. No matter how fast the target was, no matter how far they ran, the maple leaves only needed to follow the path and hit the target. With Zen, however, he realized he could manipulate the path. This was why he circled the sky several times. He created a path that looped, which trapped the maple leaves in an infinite path. As long as he didn't break the circle, the maple leaves were doomed to fly in a circle for eternity. He approached Holly again and tapped him on the shoulder, creating a path that led straight to the ladder. Because Zen now understood the nature of the flaming maple forest, he no longer feared it. In fact, he used it to his advantage. He could let the maple leaves kill Holly for him. Once the creatures and the Eternal Realm warriors recovered from their initial shock, they hurried to make plans. 3 short members of the magic dwarf race stepped forward first. The one in the lead raised an intact gold and silver skeleton above his head. "This gold and silver skeleton is extremely rare. Please accept it." The members of the Misty River race watched sullenly. Generally, when an intact gold and silver skeleton was retrieved, the creatures were not allowed to keep it. The Misty River race would definitely get a share of it. Intact gold and silver skeletons were extremely rare, and the Misty River race would take them as their own, and then give some broken bones to the ones who retrieved the skeletons. To their surprise, the magic dwarf race had actually kept an intact gold and silver skeleton without them knowing. It was common for other races and Eternal Realm warriors to privately store whatever retrieved from the Divine River. The Misty River race was aware of this, of course, but they never imagined the magic dwarf race was audacious enough to keep a whole gold and silver skeleton and present it to Zen right in front of them. The instant Holly died, the magic dwarf race ceased to take the Misty River race seriously. "What do you mean?" Larkin suddenly cut in. "We, the Misty River race, are the masters of the flaming maple forest." Larkin was young and aggressive. He couldn't help but scold the member of the magic dwarf race. The member of the magic dwarf race turned his head to shoot Larkin a contemptuous glance. "Holly is dead. You are too weak to be the master of the flaming maple forest," he sneered. Although the members of the magic dwarf race were short, they were by no means ordinary. Just like the members of the Misty River race, they were all born with strong physical bodies. However, because the Misty River race had Holly's extraordinary strength on their side, they had always had the upper hand. As a result, the Magic Dwarf race had always been suppressed. Although the population of the Magic Dwarf race was hundreds of times larger than that of the Misty River race, Holly was powerful enough to wipe them out by himself. The Magic Dwarf race were so afraid of Holly that they were willing to swallow the insults and humiliation thrown at them. But now, things were different. Holly was dead. The Magic Dwarf race saw this as an opportunity. It was rare for the human race to reach here. Only those at the Eternal Realm ever made it to the Flaming Maple Forest. In the long history, the human race had made many brilliant achievements, but it disappeared for a long time. It was not until recently that a few of its members appeared in the Grand Pure Realm. They alone were definitely unable to manage the vast Flaming Maple Forest. As a result, the Magic Dwarf race was happy to do this on behalf of Zen. Is it useful? Zen asked the ancestry-level bloodline in his body. But the ancestry-level bloodline did not respond. Obviously, it had no interest in the supposed rare treasure before it. Of course it's useful, it's sacred to any body refiner. An intact gold and silver skeleton only shows up once every 10,000 years. Eastern Emperor Tai said excitedly. But when he saw everyone staring at him, he suddenly fell quiet. His face turned red with embarrassment for the first time. After all, he was the leader of the Oneness Sky Palace, and the backer of the human race in the Bloom Divine Province. It was indeed a little inappropriate for him to comment on a treasure, especially in front of a younger warrior, but he couldn't help himself. Although he had found a lot of things in the Divine River in the past few years, not all of them were useful. From time to time, some strange things would float down from the upper reaches of the Divine River, but other creatures would immediately snatch them before he could even get close. As a result, the other shore tokens that Eastern Emperor Tai brought back to the Oneness Sky Palace to benefit the members at the Holy Soul Realm were basically lowly things that no one wanted. Once, he had found a piece of gold and silver bone, which was only the size of a fingernail. However, this small treasure already made him feel as though he'd uncovered a supreme other shore token. After all, after he reached the Eternal Realm, not many treasures could be used to strengthen his body. Now that he saw an intact gold and silver skeleton, he could hardly control his excitement. Since you say it's a good thing, please accept it, said Zen. The gold and silver skeleton might not be useful for him, but it was extremely important to Eastern Emperor Tai, Fuxi, the Snake Goddess, and King Yayan, who were all at the Eternal Realm. The gift that the Magic Dwarf race presented to Zen not only caused the dissatisfaction of the Misty River race, but caused a ripple effect among the other races that lived along the Divine River. They too scrambled to find worthy offerings. It was evident to all that Zen was an incredibly important, powerful man. If they could get on his good side, they could possibly benefit from it, or at the very least, they could avoid certain death. However, just as those races were about to line up to give Zen gifts, all the maple trees in the Flaming Maple Forest began to tremble. Splash! It was as if a gust of wind had swept through the Flaming Maple Forest, and all the maple leaves began to rustle at this moment. The flaming maple trees suddenly came to life, communicating with each other in a unique way. Plop, plop, waves suddenly appeared in the Divine River. Countless thick roots suddenly emerged on the surface of the river. These were the roots of the flaming maple trees. Curious, the crowd stopped in their tracks to watch the roots carry something out of the water. It seemed the roots entwined around two burnt, black limbs, and sent them to the shore. One of the burnt limbs was sent to the Wheeler, and the other was sent to the Magic Dwarf race. Chapter 3549, The Choice of the Flaming Maple Forest. One of the charred black limbs was a leg and the other was an arm. The members of various races and the Eternal Realm warriors were stunned, their breaths quickening, as these limbs appeared on the surface of the Divine River. Holly devoured a scorched limb, which everyone in the Flaming Maple Forest knew about. Many warriors of various races maintained that this was the reason why Holly was so powerful. When these warriors were looking for all sorts of strange treasures in the Divine River, they naturally hoped to get lucky enough to lay hands on the charred limbs one day. To everyone's disappointment, no one had gotten a second charred limb across the years. Who would have thought that two black limbs were hidden in the Flaming Maple Forest? The roots of the flaming maple trees were strong, and both sides of the Divine River were covered with these trees. Everything that happened in the Divine River would be under the control of the Flaming Maple Forest, so it was easy for the Flaming Maple Forest to obtain anything from the Divine River. Once the black limb is devoured, one's physical strength will increase by leaps and bounds. It can make me stronger than Holly. This is our race's sacred object. The crowd was now extremely excited. One's strength could increase to an unimaginable level after they obtained a black limb. This temptation was so strong that it astonished the other shore creatures. The flaming maple forest had probably sensed that many warriors from various races were about to make a move. Branches covered in maple leaves surrounded the members of the Misty River race and the Magic Dwarf race, the maple leaves flashing the red light. This was a serious warning. Several warriors saw the red maple leaves and subconsciously came to a halt. They didn't forget that they were in the flaming maple forest, and knew what would happen if they were attacked by these maple leaves. But more warriors wished for good luck. They believed that as long as they didn't use their energy, the flaming maple forest wouldn't attack them. And if they were lucky enough to grab the black limbs, the benefits would be obvious enough. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The warriors swarmed towards the members of the Misty River race and the Magic Dwarf race. "You're courting death. How dare you rob us?" The faces of the members of the Misty River race and the Magic Dwarf race darkened. These two races were powerful in the flaming maple forest, but they were under immense pressure in the face of the riot that so many warriors were staging. The warriors in the front had barely approached them when the red maple leaves fell off the branches. Before this, the maple leaves had flown in a rather relaxed manner towards their targets. The red maple leaves, however, were completely different. They were like sharp arrows shooting towards the people approaching them. "That's not a long distance," Zen said. The length of the invisible route determined the time it would take for the maple leaves to approach the target. The maple leaves exploded rapidly in this short route. Boom, 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 boom. The warriors of different races who were at the front of the approaching horde were smashed into pieces by the maple leaves. When the remaining warriors watched the warriors in front of them meet this miserable end, they became frightened and realized the cruel reality that awaited them. They'd be courting death if they continued on like this. Once they figured this out, all of them began to retreat. The members of the Misty River race and the Magic Dwarf race remained nervous for a while. The snake goddess seemed to realize something as she watched this scene unfold. "It looks like the flaming maple forest is the real owner of this place. The Misty River race doesn't have the ability to control the flaming maple forest. Holly was just a helper chosen by the flaming maple forest." Eastern Emperor Tai and King Yayan were stunned at first, but soon realized that the snake goddess was right. The black limb that Holly had eaten before had probably been given to him by the flaming maple forest. So the flaming maple forest has now chosen the Misty River race and the Magic Dwarf race at the same time, right? Fuxi asked in disbelief. "I think so." The snake goddess smiled. "Zen has easily killed Holly, which might have brought a lot of pressure on the flaming maple forest. The forest will, as a result, expand its team. It wants to expand its team just to deal with me." Zen's eyes narrowed. "What will the flaming maple forest do if I grab a black limb?" Zen had barely finished talking when the three flaming maple trees close by suddenly bent down to Zen, stretching out their branches as if in obeisance. The maple leaves on the branches flickered with the green light. This was a sign that the flaming maple forest was actually showing him kindness. The forest was afraid that Zen would really fight for the black limbs. Zen was the only person the flaming maple forest could do nothing to. "It is just a casual suggestion," Zen said, shrugging. He wouldn't stay in the flaming maple forest for a long time. What was more, he had no interest in the flaming maple forest or the divine river. However, the black limb can greatly strengthen the physical body. "I don't need it but," Zen said, eyes narrowed and a smirk on his face. The snake goddess, Fuxi, Yasamine, Eastern Emperor Tai and King Yayan were all shocked at Zen's words. If their bodies were strengthened to be as powerful as Holly's, their strength would also increase greatly. In the distance, the members of the Misty River race and the Magic Dwarf race were also paying attention to what was happening here, their faces deathly pale. They weren't afraid of other warriors coming to snatch the limbs. But they couldn't escape or resist if Zen came for them. They would have no choice but to surrender. The black limbs were related to the race's fate. How could they let others take them away? However, before Zen could finish talking, the divine river beside him began to churn violently. Countless stems lifted the items at the bottom of the divine river. Among them were gold and silver bones flickering with two types of lights, azure blue crystals, and dazzlingly shiny thin clothes. Zen knew that these things were very valuable, and though they were not as valuable as the charred black limbs, they were still a huge fortune for the warriors of various races in the Grand Pure Realm. Everyone, including the snake goddess, Fuxi, and Eastern Emperor Tai, were interested in them. "This fortune is too much." King Yayan was good at calculating the value of items. With just a glance, it was able to roughly determine the value of this pile. Wheeler didn't relax. He knew that although this pile was large, the combined value of these items was not as high as that of the black limbs. What if Zen didn't give up on the black limbs? Perhaps the flaming maple forest knew this, which was probably why one of the maple trees suddenly stretched out a branch and began to write on the ground. The Eternal Realm warrior can't absorb the charred corpse and will die after swallowing it. You can try if you don't believe me. These words disappointed Fuxi, the snake goddess, and the others, forcing them to give up their fantasy. There was a clear distinction between the Eternal Realm warriors and the other creatures. The latter were other shore creatures born in the Three Purities stage, while the Eternal Realm warriors had arrived there through the scroll painting. With a noncommittal look on his face, Zen asked, "What is the story behind the charred corpse?" One could strengthen their body to a terrifying extent by swallowing the black limbs. The charred corpse must have been extremely powerful when it was alive, even its backstory was probably extraordinary. Chapter 3550, Inquire. Zen was not the only one who felt curious. The others, including the snake goddess, Fuxi, and even the members of the Magic Dwarf and Misty River races, all watched from a distance, eager to know the truth. Leaves swished and rustled, as the branches danced on the ground again. A long time ago, a fireball rushed down from the upper reaches. The fire was so fierce that the divine river, which was overflowed with water, evaporated completely, leaving the riverbed dry. When the fire was finally extinguished, only these three limbs were left. It is not known who they belong to. Everyone felt a slight tinge of disappointment at the answer given by the flaming maple forest. After all, everyone wanted to explore the secrets of the Supreme Pure Realm and the Jade Pure Realm. Based on that story, however, it must have been an extremely long time since the fireball struck the river. In fact, these three black limbs had been preserved in the flaming maple forest for many years. The black limb in Holly's hands was also a secret gift from the forest. How do you know that the charred corpse is lethal to the Eternal Realm warriors? Zen asked. The flaming maple forest stretched out a branch and wrote more words on the ground. See for yourself. No need, I trust you, Zen said, shaking his head. He could try and test the truth of the claim, but there was no reason to doubt the forest. The air was filled with a rustling sound as the flaming maple forest withdrew the branch. The members of the Misty River race and the Magic Dwarf race breathed a sigh of relief. The head of the Misty River race, Wheeler, was especially overjoyed. He had tried countless times, hoping to reach Wheeler's level. But his efforts didn't pay off. He was the successor to the previous ruler of the Misty River race, but it had always been very clear that he was just a nominal head. But now he had a chance to change that. If he devoured the black limb, he would be able to become as powerful as Holly. Before the other members of the Misty River race had any idea what he planned, he quickly stuffed the black limb into his mouth and began gnawing at it. After all, the flaming maple forest had given the black limb to the Misty River race, not to Wheeler specifically. If the other members of the Misty River race were unconvinced, the situation would be even more troublesome. Meanwhile, the members of the Magic Dwarf race also had the same thought. The population of the Magic Dwarf race was much larger than that of the Misty River race. They boasted over 40 clans. Every now and then, one of the clans led a foray into the flaming maple forest, while the head of the Magic Dwarf race rarely came to the forest. Logically speaking, the clan who had taken the black limb should present it to the head of the Magic Dwarf race. But that was impossible now, since the clan leader was already devouring the black limb. This would greatly increase his strength, and it was likely that there would be conflict and slaughter when he returned. Zen had no interest in the internal disputes of these races. He was more concerned about the wealth of resources given by the flaming maple forest. On the other side of the forest, a wave of energy suddenly appeared out of nowhere. It shimmered in the air, and then formed the shape of a door. Before the door could solidify, countless maple leaves clustered on the surface of the door. Then, the leaves exploded, destroying the door before it could become fully formed. On the other side of the door, dozens of long-haired monsters had gathered. They were shocked at the burst of power they felt when the outside of the door was shattered by exploding maple leaves. The monsters all began talking at once. That explosion released real energy. We can't withstand the damage of real energy. It would be rash to go out now. We would die. The long-haired monsters looked worried and helpless. Through great effort, they had finally managed to catch a creature from outside. The news they heard had spurred them to rush straight to the flaming maple forest, but they had underestimated the strange powers of the forest. The maple leaves actually contained a terrible real energy. This kind of real energy could pierce through most defensive methods. The more energy the maple leaves released, the more damage they would cause to the target, and there was almost no way to eliminate or reduce the energy. "I don't care what's in there," said a crisp new voice from behind them. "You must find my grandma by all means." The voice continued, "If my grandma dies, the curse on you will never be removed for the rest of your lives." Meanwhile, not far away, a human woman sat quietly in a corner, her slender pale legs tucked to one side. It was none other than Dorothy. There had been significant changes in her body and overall appearance. Her midnight black hair had turned into vivid purple crystals. Even her eyebrows were made up of amethysts. Her eyes shone like glowing purple gems. Compared to before, her aura was countless times stronger. Even the creatures in stage 33 could no longer stand against her. The long-haired monsters heard Dorothy's threat, and they were quick to respond. They were afraid of hearing such threats from this violet-haired woman. "We have worked very hard," said one of the monsters. "We've heard that she should be in the flaming maple forest now." "But, what if your grandma died a long time ago?" a monster asked tentatively. Dorothy was merciless. "Then the curse will not be lifted from you. I will help you only if my grandma is alive," she said curtly, pursing her lips. A white-haired monster walked towards her, carrying a square, black brick in its hand. The brick was hollow, filled with a bubbling violet liquid. A white mist flowed out from the surface of the boiling liquid. As the white-haired monster approached Dorothy, it said, "If your grandma is alive, you need enough strength to save her. If she is dead, you also need enough strength to avenge her. Drink this." Dorothy was at first inclined to refuse, but as she stared at the purple liquid, she began to think that it was sensible advice. She hesitated for a moment, and then she took the black brick and tilted it to her mouth. She swallowed down every drop of the drink. "Since the door can't take shape in the flaming maple forest, we can try moving it outside. Then we can enter the forest and look for your grandma," the white-haired monster suggested. "But if we are exposed," said one of the monsters in an anxious tone. The white-haired monster chuckled. "We can't hide for the rest of our lives. Sooner or later, they will know." These words helped to build the resolve of the long-haired monsters. Looking resolute, they moved the door out of the flaming maple forest, as they had been ordered to do. When the door was opened, 4 of the monsters silently slipped into the forest. The door disappeared after them. The rest of them waited, not saying much, but anticipating new developments. 4 hours later, the 4 long-haired monsters returned. They did this by knocking on the air, which caused the door to reappear. They quickly filed through the door, and when they had all passed, the door vanished once more. "Have you got any news?" Dorothy demanded, wearing a worried frown. "Yes," answered the monster in the lead. "Your grandma is still alive." Dorothy stood up immediately. A vibrant purple light emanated from her eyes, spreading out across her face and hair. She was projecting a powerful, fierce aura. Even though the long-haired monsters present had their own astonishing strength, they were all suppressed by Dorothy's incomparable aura. The one standing nearest to her made a harsh sound as it felt the force of her power, unable to speak. The affected monster started to cough. It reached up and grabbed its own throat. Only then did Dorothy realize what happened. She quickly restrained her aura and said, "I apologize." She hadn't been able to fully control her own strength. The long-haired monsters glanced at each other. When they were certain she had regained control, the one in the lead stepped forward. It took a few deep breaths before telling her what had happened in the flaming maple forest. Chapter 3551, The Second Body. There were many different races in the Grand Pure Realm, and the flaming maple forest had just undergone drastic changes. This was why the long-haired monsters hadn't had any trouble sneaking in and getting the information they desired. It was in fact, quite easy for them. Their report surprised Dorothy greatly. "A human, 70 to 80 feet high saved my grandmother." "Are you sure?" "Yes, I am sure. This human is said to be incredibly powerful," answered the long-haired monster, an eagerness noticeably flickering in its eyes. All these monsters were powerful themselves and were interested in competing against the human mentioned. But no human is 70 to 80 feet tall. Did he activate the wild god body? Dorothy pressed further. The wild god body cannot be used in the flaming maple forest, so it can't be that. No matter how, your grandmother is safe now. It is said the human defeated all the creatures in the flaming maple forest. The long-haired monster stared intensely at Dorothy after it spoke, and the other monsters did the same. She had been putting off the matter they had pleaded her to resolve with the excuse of having to save her grandmother first. The long-haired monsters then made it their top priority to save Yasmin. Now that someone else had saved her, Dorothy had no excuses. It was time for her to fulfill her promise. "Your grandmother will be fine under the human's protection. It's your turn to help us now. It wasn't us who saved your grandmother, but we put a lot of time into it. Dorothy looked around mischievously at their pleas. Before I do that, could I first go see my grandmother? The long passageway then fell into a gloomy state of disappointment. The long-haired monsters stared down Dorothy with daggers in their eyes. They had been waiting too long for this, patiently hoping she would remove their curse as soon as possible. It was now obvious she did not take their pleading seriously. They were so infuriated they almost felt like killing her on the spot. I'm just kidding, Dorothy said, shrugging her shoulders nervously as she realized her humor was not being well received. The mood did however seem to ease a bit when she spoke up. A thick white fog flowed over the broad, low-lying area all year long. This fog had not cleared since this place had come into existence. This was how it came to be known as the Misty Pool. If one stood at the edge of the low-lying land and looked down, they would only be able to see 10 feet away, at most, never seeing what lay in the center of this mysterious place. There were some curious creatures and Eternal Realm warriors that had gone into the fog to explore, but none had ever returned. For as far back as was known, what hid in this pit was an unsolvable mystery. And so it remained. If someone dared jump into the pit, they would discover their bodies moved out of control in the white fog. They would sink like boulders to the bottom of the pit where the ground was covered in a bright yellow gum. The whole thing looked like a gigantic piece of amber and the soft gum would slowly absorb anything that was caught in it, dissolving it all bit by bit. Any creatures unlucky enough to witness this would see all sorts of creatures of all form trapped within the huge amber. Some were only slightly worn away while others were left as nothing more than hard bones. The amber had a circular hole in the middle which extended down, deep into the ground, to a cave that never saw a speck of light. In the cave were 6 round stone platforms with a square coffin placed on each. Beside the first platform stood 3 women. They were Samantha, Sienna and Stella. They seemed to have held this posture for painfully long, so long their bodies had turned stiff. But their faces showed no trace of impatience or suffering. They just continued waiting firmly and devoutly. Crack! A strange sound came from the coffin on the platform and the thick, heavy lid slowly slid to the side. A bright yellow mist emerged from it, quickly morphing into a hand of bone as it left the coffin. Following the bone, flesh, blood and veins soon materialized and formed a complete hand. It rose into the air steadily and a head, shoulders and a torso quickly formed behind it. It was none other than the Grand Master of Heaven. Congratulations on your return, Grand Master of Heaven. Samantha, Sienna, and Stella bowed to him with tremendous respect. The Grand Master of Heaven looked at his arm sadly. After a moment he grumbled, I'm not used to this new body. Did you not say your new body will be stronger than the one you had before? Samantha asked with a smile. As members of the Interception sect, they never regretted following the Grand Master of Heaven. They wouldn't even hesitate to sacrifice their own lives for him if they had to. That's true, nodded the Grand Master of Heaven, they gave me 3 bodies, each stronger than the last. This second one is indeed extraordinary, but it takes some time to adapt to it. Is it stronger than the Ice Spirits? Stella asked, blinking her eyes in excitement. If I had fought the Ice Spirit with this body in our last battle, I would have defeated him, replied the Grand Master of Heaven. Then, what about Zen? Sienna asked. Although they held great respect for him, he was not so stern that they had to behave a certain way in his presence. More to it, they had followed him for many years and were very close to him and so were not afraid to discuss sensitive topics with him. Zen, the Grand Master of Heaven's eyes flashed at the mention of Zen. Over the years, he had led the Nihility race against the Element Spirit civilization as evenly matched rivals. Never in his wildest dreams had he expected he would be defeated so humiliatingly by a young man. He had been reflecting on his defeat during his resurgence and was now capable of reacting calmly. He saved the Pear Hill, he should have entered stage 33 by now, right? The Grand Master of Heaven inquired. Sienna took a step forward and answered, according to the latest reports, he was in the Flaming Maple Forest. Why would he enter the territory of the Misty River race? Wondered the Grand Master of Heaven. He was trying to save the replica of Eastern Emperor Tai, revealed Sienna. Although the Misty River race only has a few members, Holly is not someone he'd be able to defeat easily. Just as he murmured thoughtfully, Sienna interrupted him, the Ice Spirit sent Norris and some others to keep an eye on the Flaming Maple Forest but Zen left them all seriously injured. He even killed Holly. It is said that even the Flaming Maple Forest bowed to his strength. The 3 women spent most of their time gathering information for the Grand Master of Heaven and so were naturally very well informed. Sienna's news stunned the Grand Master of Heaven into silence. We've been waiting for you to wake up. You're the only one capable of capturing that young man, added Samantha. Capture him? The Grand Master of Heaven pondered this for a moment before smiling and shaking his head. Forget it, he said. Why? Asked the three women curiously. His next goal is probably to save the primeval Lord of Heaven, the Grand Master of Heaven replied. Let the Ice Spirit deal with him first. Let's just wait and see what happens. Since Zen carried the civilization artifact of the human race, it seemed likely he wanted to rescue all the human heroes. Because of this, he was bound to clash with the element spirit civilization, and the Nihility race needed only to stand by and watch. Since Zen could defeat Holly with ease, the Grand Master of Heaven believed that he would be a severe headache for the Ice Spirit. Chapter 3552, Track. Shoes roughly scraped off the ground, as Zen and his group continued to head north of the flaming maple forest. The leaves of the flaming maple trees on both sides glowed green along their way and emitted a soft, friendly aura. When they got out of the flaming maple forest, the branches even waved goodbye to Zen even if there was no wind. I'm sure you're the first one to get this treatment, said King Yayan beside him. It dragged a hill-like package behind it, wrapped up in a patched-up skin of a tamed cat. It was not convenient to use the space ring in the flaming maple forest, so it had to use such a primitive method to carry their things. I'm also sure that the flaming maple forest never wants you to come back, Fuxi chimed in. In general, Zen was perhaps one of the few people who could safely walk out of the flaming maple forest, even though he had used energy within it. There used to be some particularly special cases, but none of them was the same as his. He looked back at the flaming maple forest and asked, if we head west and go upwards along the Divine River, can we enter the Supreme Pure Realm and the Jade Pure Realm? A smile graced King Yayan's lips at the question. Of course not, it answered. Why? Zen asked. Theoretically speaking, one could reach the Jade Pure Realm by walking along the Divine River since the source of the Divine River was in the Jade Pure Realm. King Yayan pointed at the west and said, it seems that this direction will lead us to the Supreme Pure Realm, but that is only true in theory. We speculated that the Three Purities stage was originally made up of three independent worlds. However, these three worlds are connected through a precise dislocation of space. Then, I suppose there are very few entrances, and they are similar to the star rings and the stage end passage. Zen asked again. No, the snake goddess answered. On the contrary, there are many entrances, but very few can walk through them alive, she explained. Most of the warriors at the Eternal Realm who entered Stage 33 stayed in the Grand Pure Realm, which was in the outermost part of the Three Purities stage. Very few of them had gone into the Supreme Pure Realm. Simply put, it was truly hard to enter the Supreme Pure Realm successfully. But we already have a way to enter it. You don't have to worry about that, said Fuxi as he untied the bag on his waist. Then, the augury dog came out from the bag. The augury dog's talent lay in his ability to detect danger in his surroundings. He could do so by scanning the area using a special energy field, which would activate the maple leaves in the flaming maple forest. However, he could not stop once he started to detect things. Therefore, Fuxi had put him inside his spirit beast bag before they entered the flaming maple forest. Like the Sumeru space, the spirit beast bag wouldn't trigger the power of space as long as it was not used in the flaming maple forest. As soon as Fuxi released the augury dog, he turned around and barked twice at the flaming maple forest. What's wrong? He asked. Ever since Zen exhibited his powers in the flaming maple forest, no one dared to chase after him and cause him trouble. Someone is following us, the augury dog said. Upon hearing those words, the snake goddess, Eastern Emperor Tai, Yasamine, and the others all narrowed their eyes. Zen had finally solved the problem in the flaming maple forest. They just had to deal with the package first, then find a safe place to retreat from the other shore. Still, if someone with ill will always follow them, everything would be more complicated. After all, it was easy to find a member of the gear race, like Norris. If someone dragged them back to the other shore from the chaos, they would be attacked off guard. Let's lure them out of the flaming maple forest first, the snake goddess suggested. In turn, King Yayan hurriedly unwrapped the package while these Eternal Realm warriors activated their own Sumeru spaces to absorb the things inside the package. After they divided up all the things inside it, they continued to walk north. As they advanced, King Yayan flicked the ground constantly. They suddenly stopped after about 20 miles of travel. King Yayan turned around and shouted, "Let's see how you can hide." As it spoke, it stretched out its hands and quickly raised them. Multiple cyan beads that glowed with a faint cyan light appeared on the ground in the distance. Although the light was dim, it illuminated the area within a few miles around it. Then, the outlines of two winged figures became visible in the cyan light. Humph! Without any hesitation, Zen kicked hard at the ground. The earth cracked, then he flew swiftly like an arrow and grabbed at the figures with lightning speed. However, his hands only passed through the two figures, and he grabbed nothing. He even heard the pair of shadows sneer at him as if mocking his ignorance. Zen, come down, you can't hurt them, Eastern Emperor Tai said. In the end, Zen only frowned and slowly descended to the ground. They are shadow warriors who serve the element spirit civilization. Their real bodies are not here, said the snake goddess. The shadow warriors weren't very strong, but their race's theurgy produced a shadow that was resistant to almost anything, which made them the perfect stalkers. If the element spirit civilization needed to track specific targets, they would just send out the shadow warriors. It appears that they won't let us return to the source word so easily, Yasmin scoffed coldly. So we can't get rid of them? Zen asked. It's difficult, the snake goddess said and shook her head. Could they possibly enter the dark region? He asked again. The snake goddess immediately understood what he meant and said, the shadow warriors shouldn't be able to enter the dark region, but the dark region of the Grand Pure Realm is in the northwest. I'm afraid, since the element spirit civilization had sent out the shadow warriors to keep an eye on them, they wouldn't possibly let them escape that easily. Then, let's try. Masters, please climb up on my shoulders first, Zen announced. He crouched down to let them ride on his broad shoulders, since his body was still about 80 feet tall. Fuxi, the snake goddess, Eastern Emperor Tai, and the others agreed and jumped up. Once they were settled down on his shoulders, he rushed forward and headed north again. The two faint shadows in the sky had never disappeared. They seemed to be completely isolated from the world. Like the moon and sun, they always followed him at a steady speed. At that moment, the two shadow warriors projected the scenes that they saw on an ice piece. Meanwhile, 3 white balls floated on one side of the ice piece. Hot flames burned steadily in the center of one of the white balls. Not long after, a young girl's head appeared. It was none other than Claire. The moment Claire took shape, thunder and lightning cracked inside the white ball beside her and outlined a burly human figure. It turned out to be Les, the second of the 3 backbones of the element spirit civilization. A human boy actually defeated the Grand Master of Heaven. Ha ha ha, Les laughed in a hoarse voice. My instincts never fail me, Claire said seriously, though it's a pity that such a talent can't work for us. So, he could only die. This delicate voice came from the last white ball, which contained a strange-looking life form. The creature looked like a cold armor but had a pair of long light wings on the back. He was the last one of the 3 backbones of the element spirit race, Slade. Les and Claire were both pure element spirits, and they had quite simple forms. However, Slade was different. He was made up of countless members of the element spirit race, who formed a world of their own inside his body. They controlled everything he did. Chapter 3553, Mark and offer a reward. The last time when Les wanted to kill Zen straight, Claire rejected him. Now that she knew that they could never win Zen over, she no longer tried to dissuade Les from doing what he wanted. It's a pity that I can't leave now, or I would go to the Grand Pure Realm and burn this guy into ashes, Les muttered. A few thin lightning bolts clashed with each other as he spoke, which was why his voice seemed laced with the sizzling noise of electric currents. We're just watching, but doing nothing, Claire deadpanned. As the 3 backbones of the element spirit race, the 3 of them occasionally received reinforcements. Those reinforcements also helped them improve their strengths over the years. They couldn't leave on their own as of now, and couldn't go to kill Zen. I can't get in touch with the ice spirit recently. He should have entered the Jade Pure Realm again. It's a bit tricky now, Claire said with a frown. She had no hesitation in her the moment she decided to kill Zen. After all, she didn't pity him, though she genuinely wanted him to be on their side. Then let the warriors from other races on the Grand Pure Realm do something first, Slade suddenly suggested. Warriors of other races? Les asked. He didn't understand what Slade was talking about. Mark and offer a reward, Claire said with a nod. The 2 shadow warriors listened to Slade's orders, while he formed good relationships with many warriors from various races on the Grand Pure Realm under the Ice Spirit's instruction. Generally speaking, every race on the 3 Purities stage had their unique theurgies and powers. An ordinary Eternal Realm warrior who explored the Grand Pure Realm, which was the outermost part of the 3 Purities stage, was already like a person treading on immensely thin ice. Any warrior from the many races on the Grand Pure Realm was automatically their deadliest opponent. However, the element spirit civilization had been in the 3 Purities stage for so many years. Although they couldn't subdue all of the races on the Grand Pure Realm, they could still have good relationships with them, as well as exchange interests and make deals with them. Clatter, clatter, clatter. At that moment, Slade, who had an armor-like body, suddenly stretched out his hands, and then a white beam of light spread out. At the same time, different treasures appeared one after another. It's not easy to make those guys obedient. Offering them the ghost tendon. That does not sound good enough. The Dead Sea Glaze. Too unpopular. Various treasures flew past the white light in succession. Even Claire and Les couldn't help but eye the treasures with slight interest. That was because the Ice Spirit collected most of them. The Ice Spirit usually stored a considerable amount of treasures inside Slade's body. After all, Slade was not an individual. He could be likened to a city that could move. It was just that members of the Element Spirit race lived in the city. Thus, his current actions represented the decisions of all the members of the Element Spirit race in the city. I think I'll just use this one. In his glowing hands floated some ordinary bone fragments that were about the size of a thumb. Upon seeing the bone fragments, Claire and Les looked skeptical. The bone fragment's secret soul. It's too precious. Will the Ice Spirit even agree? The two of them understood that Slade represented the Element Spirit Civilization's Board of Elders to a certain extent, and he had greater rights than Claire and Les. The Ice Spirit usually did not object to any decisions he made. That Zen is quite powerful. The warriors of the other races on the Grand Pure Realm are not idiots. Only a great reward will make them brave, said Slade. Although Claire and Les felt sad at the thought that such a great treasure had to go, they could not interfere. Once Slade made a decision, he wouldn't change his mind, let alone consider what the two of them thought. Buzz. When the white light in his hand flashed, he said towards the ice piece, Shadow Warriors. Yes, sir. The Shadow Warriors in the ice piece answered. Mark Zen, Slade ordered. Yes, sir. In turn, the two Shadow Warriors stretched out their hands towards Zen simultaneously. Buzz. Then, two rays of light intersected with each other and formed a distinct mark on Zen's back. Meanwhile, Zen suddenly felt something as he ran. He turned his head and glanced at the mark. What's this? He asked. Shadow mark, King Yayan blurted out. What's it for? The shadow mark lasts for about 5 days after it appears. During that period, warriors from various races could find your location, King Yayan continued. Zen frowned deeply. Can it be removed? He asked again. King Yayan shook its head. No method can remove it, it said regrettably. The shadow mark was quite well known in the Grand Pure Realm. After the appearance of the shadow mark, the Element Spirit Civilization would offer a big reward to anyone who could do their bidding. Of course, almost all the warriors from the many races would be interested. Furthermore, the shadow mark would stay permanent for a few days. Even if one fled from the other shore, the mark still followed them. The snake goddess, Fuxi, and the others had also heard of it before, but this was the first time they had seen it. All their faces darkened. However, as soon as King Yayan finished speaking, Zen's ancestry-level bloodline started to fluctuate. A large, bloody mouth appeared on his back, which was quite near the shadow mark. The mouth bit towards it and swallowed it up. Quote, quote, King Yayan looked at the scene, dumbfounded. Quote, quote, the snake goddess, Fuxi, Eastern Emperor Tai, and Yasmin were also speechless. On the other hand, the two shadow warriors that floated in the air looked at each other. They had no idea what had happened. The shadow mark is something you can't touch, like those two shadow warriors. How did you swallow it? King Yayan couldn't help but ask. Since you swallowed the mark, then that means you could also get rid of the two shadow warriors above, right? The snake goddess also asked. A wry smile graced Zen's face as he shook his head. In truth, the ancestry-level bloodline did things on a whim. Thus, he couldn't control it or make it do what he wanted. Next to the ice piece in the Supreme Pure Realm stood Slade, who already planned to share the location of the shadow mark with the various races. When the mark disappeared at such a critical moment, he naturally felt enraged. Shadow warriors, what are you doing? He snapped. That Zen had devoured the shadow mark. One of the shadow warriors stammered. Clearly, he was immensely afraid of Slade. He did eat it. I saw it too. Claire and Les still watched the ice piece. When they saw the big gap on Zen's back, they were also baffled. We can mark the people around him. Yes, that's a good idea. Without waiting for Slade to give the order, the two shadow warriors once again summoned shadow marks. This time, they aimed at the snake goddess and Eastern Emperor Tai. Shadow marks appeared on the two Eternal Realm warriors' backs almost at once. When Zen saw that the shadow marks appeared again, he tried to remove them for the snake goddess and Eastern Emperor Tai, but the ancestry-level bloodline sensed that the marks were none of its business. It did not even fluctuate in the slightest, and entirely ignored them. As soon as the marks had formed completely, the white light in Slade's hand began to spiral. At the same time, a circular white vortex also appeared on the ice piece. Several large non-human races in the Grand Pure Realm had a huge ice piece inside their places. At this moment, white vortexes also rolled in the center of these ice pieces. Chapter 3554, Brewing Storm. The relationship between the many non-human races of the Grand Pure Realm and the Element Spirit civilization was strained at best. The Element Spirit civilization had been the first ones to be born in the chaos, and were the first to enter the other shore. They had a longer history than most of the other living creatures in the Three Purities stage. The many non-human races of the Grand Pure Realm had once fought fiercely with the Element Spirit civilization. Some powerful races were able to win and maintain their own, separate status. Some had lost and had to submit to the Element Spirit civilization. As the Element Spirit civilization grew stronger and stronger, they began to advance on to the Supreme Pure Realm and then the Jade Pure Realm. Because of this, many races in the Grand Pure Realm wanted to curry favor with the Element Spirit civilization. The Flaming Maple Forest was strong, but the races in it were still hoping to be able to rely on the Element Spirit civilization's power to help them march onto the Supreme Pure Realm. Noticing the needs of these other races, the Element Spirit civilization gave them many ice pieces. If they ever needed these races' help, they would assign the tasks through them. If the tasks were completed, great rewards awaited them. Many times in the past, the tasks assigned by the Element Spirit civilization were mainly targeted at those of the Nihility race. The Nihility race had grown exponentially in the recent years though. When the races first chased down the Nihility race, they had believed them to be weak. However, the Grand Master of Heaven had easily slaughtered many of them during tasks. From that point on, everyone was beginning to realize that the Nihility race was as strong as the Element Spirit civilization. Very few dared to attack them, and the Element Spirit civilization rarely assigned tasks through the ice pieces anymore. A burly bull-headed monster lumbered towards the ice piece and stared at it for a long moment. Greed began to glint in his eyes as he exclaimed, "What? The bone fragment's secret soul. I can't believe it." The Element Spirit civilization had always been generous with their rewards, and the treasures they offered were always rare and precious. The bone fragment's secret soul was just that, it was no ordinary item. With the bone fragment's secret soul, they would be able to further strengthen and expand their race. They'd maybe even qualify to enter the Supreme Pure Realm. A second monster joined the first, eyes wide with shock. If Slade is willing to offer such a valuable thing as a reward, I can bet you the target is no ordinary creature. Not really, it's just a small group of warriors in the Eternal Realm, measly humans. Nothing to be afraid of. The monster in front of the ice piece replied. The humans in the Eternal Realm were nothing to be feared, so the creatures believed. Those of the Grand Pure Realm were only afraid of the Element Spirit civilization and the Nihility race, as they should be. The other creatures seemed to be a little more cautious. Why would they need to set such a high price if it was a simple task? He asked. There's more to it. Of course there's more to it, the first one grunted, turning his head to look over his shoulder at the other. Apparently, one of these humans just killed Holly in the Flaming Maple Forest, and left unscathed. That human is the priority target. The group of humans who killed Holly. Someone yelled from behind them. Several other of their kind were not too far away, shocked by this revelation. Holly's death had been shocking news, and spread like wildfire throughout the entirety of the Grand Pure Realm in a matter of days. Those of their race were living closely to the Flaming Maple Forest, so they were the first to know. The bull-headed creature standing before the ice piece could sense the fear of his kin. The Misty River race that resides in the forest is incredibly strong, he shouted, but they are not worthy of being mentioned outside the forest. Even if Holly was defeated by the human, it only proves he was physically strong. What the heck are you all afraid of? You're right, Holly was untouchable only because he never left the forest. Otherwise, he'd have been eliminated by the Element Spirit civilization, another creature chimed in. The target has been marked. The other races will also receive notice of this task. We have to do something before others decide to. The group of monsters were boiling over with excitement. Meanwhile, the same occurrence was happening among the other races all over the Grand Pure Realm. The Shadow Warriors had already left marks on the backs of the Snake Goddess and Eastern Emperor Tai. This group of humans would be like beacons in the dark to the monsters hunting them from every direction. The sharp sound of something flying through the air echoed all around. Zen was zipping through the air at incredible speeds, maintaining the height of 10 feet from the ground. If the snake goddess's guidance was right, they should be able to find the entrance by heading north and then west. There were many different entrances from the Grand Pure Realm to the Supreme Pure Realm. Each one was well designed and full of unknown dangers. Nearly every non-human creature and Eternal Realm warrior who could enter the Supreme Pure Realm had their own unique methods. Those two brats are incredibly annoying. King Yayan grumbled as it turned around to look at the two shadow warriors flying through the sky. They were keeping speed with Zen no matter how much faster he attempted to go. It seemed an impossible task to lose them. Hey, look out! The augury dog beside Fuxi suddenly roared and warned, "There's something coming up ahead, very dangerous." He could sense danger with his intuition, although he couldn't tell exactly what kind of danger it was. Zen squinted, trying to see what was ahead of them. An instant later, a long, thin, green arrow shot towards him. The arrow was coming at him swiftly like a bolt of lightning. Fortunately, Zen was always well prepared. With a slight tilt of his body, the arrow narrowly brushed past him. "More are coming," the augury dog observed. They whistled through the air as they cut a straight path for them. More arrows appeared ahead of them, twinkling in the sky like deadly green stars. Simultaneously they all were released and shot towards Zen. They were clumped together in irregular patterns, like a shower of flowers scattered by a fairy. "Who's firing the arrows? I can't see anyone," Zen asked. "It must be the arrow demons," King Yayan answered. "They use unique arrows that can span across incredibly long distances. Normally, they must aim for the target by eyesight, but since our positions were marked by the shadow warriors, they only need to shoot in the direction of the marks." Zen realized King Yayan was right. The arrows weren't coming directly for him, they were heading for the snake goddess and Eastern Emperor Tai on his back. The arrow demons couldn't actually see them. The arrows continued to whistle through the air non-stop. When they were struck, they were destroyed with a loud crack. Zen was avoiding as many of the arrows as he could, but when he couldn't evade them, he would swing his arm and easily deflect them to the ground. The arrows seemed to have a mind of their own though. Whenever they would hit the ground, they'd ricochet off and continue their path to the snake goddess and Eastern Emperor Tai. It left Zen with no other choice but to reach out and snatch arrows to snap them. Both the snake goddess and Eastern Emperor Tai knew the arrows were coming for them, so they were using their thurgies to protect themselves. The snake goddess had wrapped herself in a thick crimson shadow, while Eastern Emperor Tai had summoned his golden sword to circle around him. The sword wouldn't move swiftly until an arrow came too close, then it would snap out and cut the arrow in half. Despite the mass amount of arrows being rained down on them, very few actually made it near the snake goddess and Eastern Emperor Tai. Zen continued his flight, remaining low to the ground. In the face of all the sharp obstacles racing towards him, his speed did not falter. Chapter 3555, The Jade Bone Arrows. About 100 miles away from Zen, many creatures hung on the vines. Their bodies had strange shapes and they dangled from the vines entangling the trees. The lower part of their bodies was shaped like half a gourd. On the upper half were hard bones bending upwards, with golden manes falling from the end of the bones. The hard bones were bows, and the manes were bowstrings. These short creatures were called arrow demons. They took out many green arrows, and without any hesitation, started shooting them out. The vine next to the leader of the arrow demons had already borne a huge fruit. The fruit looked exactly like an eyeball, with the white sclera and a pupil in the middle. This vine with an eye-shaped fruit was called the Heavenly Eye Vine. The Heavenly Eye Vine bore a fruit that functioned much better than a normal human eye. It had good eyesight that could see 10,000 miles away. King Yayan said that the arrow demons used the shadow marks to lock them, but its assumption was not completely right. The arrow demons also used the eyeball. After they found Zen and his group through the shadow marks, it was the eyeball that detected them. All the arrow demons attacked according to what their leader saw. The relationship between the arrow demons and the Heavenly Eye Vine was the same as that of the Misty River race and the Flaming Maple Forest. They relied on each other to live. The green willow arrows don't work on him. He has a very powerful body. No wonder he was able to kill Holly. The leader of the arrow demons muttered. He saw Zen move so quickly even as arrows were shot one after another. They didn't stop or slow him down. The leader's face darkened as he issued an order, use the jade bone arrows. Hearing the leader's order, the arrow demons felt their hearts sink, but they still turned around. They forcefully pulled out the black hard bones extending from their gourd-like bodies. The process of pulling out the hard bones was excruciating. Some of the arrow demons could not help but scream as blood spurted out. After they had drawn the hard bones from their bodies, black gas began to fume from the bones. They then placed the hard bones on the bows. These bones turned out to be the jade bone arrows that the leader had mentioned. Every arrow demon would grow 6 black jade bones in their lifetime, and these bones could not be renewed. If all 6 bones were pulled out, the arrow demons would die. In other words, they were shooting the jade bone arrows at the risk of their lives. Generally, the arrow demons were to use the jade bone arrows when facing a deadly enemy. However, the reward Slade offered, namely the bone fragment's secret soul, was too tempting. The targets happened to pass by the arrow demon's territory, so they were determined not to let them go. Under the command of the leader, all the jade bone arrows were shot simultaneously. Suddenly, the leader let out a long and loud roar. Woo! All the jade bone arrows came to a stop, suspended in the air. Phew, phew, phew! A strange shadow began to appear on one end of the jade bone arrows. It was a ferocious beast's head, covered with cyan skin, with fangs extending from its snout. The arrow demons had Feather Ghost's unique bloodline. When the jade bone arrows shot out, the leader had activated their bloodline Thurgy. Whoosh! As the leader's voice shrilled, the long arrows with the Feather Ghost's heads wailed all over the sky. They shot towards Zen and his group about 100 miles away. When the arrow demons shifted to use the jade bone arrows, the rain of green arrows halted. However, Zen did not slow down. The arrow demons shot so many arrows towards him, he decided not to let them go. Why do the arrow demons stop after only 3 rounds of attacks? Eastern Emperor Tai asked suspiciously. This is not their way of doing things, Yasmin said as she shook her head. They are not a powerful race in the Grand Pure Realm. The reason why they gain a foothold in it is that they have very powerful arrows. It is said that these arrows are shot at the expense of their lives. As the snake goddess spoke, the augury dog barked fiercely again. He would remind them immediately whenever he sensed any danger, but this time, his bark had become wilder. Then, Zen saw a large group of black dots floating from the distance. They looked like heads with sharp-pointed teeth. Be careful, Zen, those are the jade bone arrows. The primeval lord of heaven in Zen's mind reminded. Although Yasmin, the snake goddess, and Fuxi had heard of the arrow demons before, they had never provoked them. They didn't know much about the jade bone arrows. Are they that powerful? Zen asked. They are arrows shot at the cost of the arrow demon's lives. They can directly kill their opponents, same as Gerald's corroding purple rain, the primeval lord of heaven explained. There was a Thurgy in the life truth called the corroding purple rain, which was used as a weapon to kill. When the rain fell, it corroded several provinces, eating away all the lives in them. In the battle against the Pear Hill, Gerald's opponents were the masters at the Eternal Realm. They were strong and thus unafraid that the raindrops could corrode their lives. However, the jade bone arrows were different. On one hand, they were more powerful than the corroding purple rain, on the other hand, they killed a certain target in unison, unlike the scattered corroding purple rain. While the group learned the characteristics of the jade bone arrows, the jade bone arrow in front of them shot towards the snake goddess. Almost faster than lightning, Zen grabbed it with his right hand. He then exerted a powerful force, crushing the jade bone arrow into tiny pieces. However, the feather ghost attached to the arrow had bitten into his arm, leaving a small mark. Swoosh! The feather ghost's head disappeared. Zen felt cold rushing through his body as if something had vanished together with the feather ghost's head. Before long, he realized that his life energy was deteriorating. Zen, are you okay? The snake goddess keenly sensed that the arrow was not simple. Yes, I'm fine. Zen was confident in his life energy and didn't dwell on it too much. Facing the dense jade bone arrows, he waved his arms that were 30 feet long and as wide as a wooden bucket. The jade bone arrows had their own consciousness. They still targeted the snake goddess and Eastern Emperor Tai on Zen's shoulders. However, when the arrows were damaged, the feather ghost's heads could only attack whoever was nearby. In a flash, Zen had destroyed dozens of bone arrows, resulting in more feather ghosts' heads biting his arms. Every time a feather ghost's head disappeared, he felt his body slowly turn cold, almost like a portion of his life energy was also being taken away. At first, there hadn't been a noticeable change in his body, but as he shattered more and more bone arrows, his body finally revealed signs of decline. Wrinkles and black spots were gradually developing on his originally bright and powerful body surface. For only a short time, Zen had grown from a young man to a middle-aged man, and then to an old man. Chapter 3556, A Deal. Zen, what's wrong with your body? Yasmin was the first one to notice the changes in Zen's body. It was weird and kind of creepy too. The lifespan of powerful masters like Yasemin and Eastern Emperor Tai was limitless. As long as they weren't defeated by some extremely powerful entity, they were essentially immortal. With such impossible ages, they could change their appearance too. Yasemin had made herself look like an old person, and Eastern Emperor Tai always appeared as a middle-aged man. They had chosen these appearances just to be in charge of the Oneness Sky Palace. The strange changes in Zen's body were occurring obviously because of those jade bone arrows. The bone arrows are taking his life. They are sucking his existence from within him. The snake goddess frowned. Zen's life energy was being crazily devoured, and his speed, strength, reaction capacity and so many other factors were all being reduced significantly. Whoosh! 4 jade bone arrows found a gap between Zen's hands and shot straight towards Eastern Emperor Tai. Eastern Emperor Tai sat down cross-legged in a flash and gently pointed with his finger. His sword immediately spiraled over and slashed at the jade bone arrows. Crack! The arrows were instantly slashed into 2 and fell down. However, the feather ghosts attached to them were not defeated. They dashed towards Eastern Emperor Tai and there was no way to dodge them. Before Eastern Emperor Tai had time to react, the feather ghosts bit him and disappeared. Immediately, Eastern Emperor Tai turned from a middle-aged man into a very old man with white hair and ragged breathing. From his condition, it seemed that he would be dead very soon. Impossible. I didn't know the jade bone arrows were so powerful. How's Zen doing that? He's been hit by so many arrows and yet he lives. Seeing that Zen had withstood about 300 arrows till now, Fuxi, the snake goddess, and the others had come to the conclusion that although the jade bone arrows were quite powerful, they were still not as terrifying as they had heard of them to be. Unexpectedly, Eastern Emperor Tai was already at his last gasp after being hit by just 4 arrows. And Zen was still fighting. Just how strong was the life energy of the latter? Zen, let's leave the other shore first. Squeak, King Luan said anxiously. There are too many bone arrows here. I'm afraid they will kill us all, the snake goddess also reminded him. Previously, they had all insisted on not retreating from the other shore because they had already been marked. Even if they left the other shore and hid somewhere temporarily, they would still be at the risk of being pulled back. As long as the enemy was waiting for them, retreating from the other shore was much more dangerous than staying here. But now that they were facing those jade bone arrows, they would be killed anyway if they didn't leave the other shore. Even the primeval Lord of Heaven advised, that's right. We'd better retreat at least for now. It would be unrealistic to pin the hopes on your bloodline. Hearing that, Zen nodded silently. Then the augury dog swiftly drilled into Fuxi's spirit beast bag, while everyone else recited the illusion-breaking rune and retreated quickly from the other shore. Zen wasn't too worried. He knew that it would be a piece of cake for the ancestry-level bloodline to replenish the life energy inside him. The trouble, however, was that the bloodline was not under Zen's own control, and sometimes, it wouldn't be as effective as it should be. It was all up to the bloodline's mood. At the moment, he had no choice but to retreat. They returned to the Pear Hill once again. The white-haired Eastern Emperor Tai was unable to hold on any longer and fell to the ground with a plop like dead meat. His life energy had been used up and he was on the very verge of death. The snake goddess stretched out her hand and gently brushed the air. A dark green pill appeared out of nowhere on her fingertips, immediately turning into a beam of green light and entering the body of Eastern Emperor Tai. However, with the damage the latter had suffered, this wasn't going to be enough. Go and ask Gerald to come over here now, the snake goddess said in a hurry. Without any delay, Fuxi moved away in a flash. After a short while, Gerald's huge figure suddenly appeared in the sky, emitting green light and looking like a green sun. Buzz! 2 green light columns shot out from his 2 pincers. The columns fell down on Eastern Emperor Tai, who gradually became strong once again. His white hair quickly turned black in front of their very eyes and his body was filled with vitality once again. Thank you, Master Gerald, Eastern Emperor Tai said as he cupped his hands towards the air in a show of gratitude. Gerald did not respond. Instead, he turned around and shot 2 more light pillars towards Zen. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The light columns shone on Zen's body. A long time passed but no major change was visible. This was unusual. Gerald's eyes narrowed slightly and he immediately understood what was going on. It wasn't that his life truth didn't work. But the problem was that the life energy which Zen had consumed was too much for him to recover in a short while. His body was like a bottomless abyss now, and it wasn't going to be easy to fill it up again. Gerald naturally wouldn't give up. He concentrated and more life energy was continuously infused into Zen's body. On the other shore, the jade bone arrows didn't fall down after being unable to find their targets anymore. Instead, they were dragged on by the feather ghosts and circled around the place where Zen and the others had been just moments ago. The arrow demons were not surprised at the sudden disappearance of Zen and his companions. They knew that the Eternal Realm warriors who came from the chaos would usually use this means to flee when in too much danger. In order to counteract this, the creatures on the other shore would often prepare the soul-interdicting water and use it to lock their targets. However, this time, the incident had happened all of a sudden, and the arrow demons hadn't gotten a chance to apply the soul-interdicting water on their bodies. Crack, 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 numerous arrow demons were hanging on the green vines. Suddenly, the vines pierced through the ground and advanced forwards at an astonishing speed. The arrow demons had almost no ability to move. They had to rely 100% on the heavenly eye vine to move. Pretty soon, using the vines, the arrow demons arrived at the place where Zen and the others had disappeared. Once again, the heavenly eye vine grew crazily, and completely surrounded the area. At the same time, the leader of the arrow demons spoke to a hill which was located nearby. There's no point in hiding. The refracting skill is a mere trick. You cannot avoid being discovered by the heavenly eye. At his words, a twisted space suddenly appeared at the back of the hill. As it gradually took shape, 3 figures with a similar appearance to Naris's appeared. These were members of the gear race. Gah, gah, as soon as the 3 members of the gear race showed up, every single arrow was suddenly placed on the bowstrings by the arrow demons and pointed at them. We're not looking for trouble. The leader of these members of the gear race raised both of his hands. Then, he continued, look, you've already caught the targets and can obtain the bounty, right? It is none of your business, the leader of the arrow demons replied coldly. Dozens of jade bone arrows were still circling around in the sky, and below them was a thorny cage made of the heavenly eye vine. The arrow demons were totally sure that they could catch Zen and his companions this time. But you still have one last step left. The man of the gear race made a gesture of grabbing something in the air. They are outside the other shore. We'll bring them back. In return, all we want is 1/3 of the bone fragment's secret soul. The leader of the arrow demons was not happy at all with this bargain. He replied in a cold voice, do you think only members of your gear race can do this task? That's too much to ask. The member of the gear race chuckled and replied, you can ask help from the members of the sickle race as well, but Zen is definitely not an ordinary Eternal Realm warrior. His physical body is astonishingly strong. Even some of the most powerful warriors of our gear race won't be able to hold on for a single round during a fight with him, and his life energy is too much to drain, which means his recovery speed is also astonishing. It won't be long before he regains his life energy. Do you have the confidence to deal with him on your own? The leader of the arrow demons fell silent at this question. He had spent so many jade bone arrows already and had forced Zen to reach his limit, like a spent arrow. If what the member of the gear race was saying was true, it would be a pity if he were to be stingy now. 1/5, said the leader of the arrow demons firmly. 1/4, replied the member of the gear race. All right, deal. As soon as the leader of the arrow demons finished speaking, the thorny vines that had formed the prison rolled around and created a path. Chapter 3557, Inexhaustible Life Energy. From the top of the heavenly eye vine, the leader of the arrow demons squinted at the 3 figures in the distance. The jade bone arrows that spiraled in the air resembled vultures circling over their prey. The arrow demons were unwilling to give the bone fragment's secret soul to the gear race. The plan was once the members of the gear race brought back the targets, they'd let the jade bone arrows rain. The jade bone arrows were deadly. There was no way the targets or the members of the gear race would come out of this alive. The arrow demons had lived with the heavenly eye vine for so long. They not only relied on their powerful archery skills for survival, but also their ruthlessness. However, the 3 members of the gear race didn't make a move after they entered the center. The one in the lead suddenly raised his head and announced, we just swallowed the exploding fire essence. Upon hearing this, the leader and the other arrow demons were all stunned. Don't worry, as long as we're unhurt, they won't explode, he added. The arrow demons and the heavenly eye vine trembled in fear. They were most afraid of the exploding fire essence. If they set off the explosion of the exploding fire essence, they would be doomed. The 3 members of the gear race eyed the arrow demons in the distance warily. When they were sure that they were in the clear, they began to look for Zen's shadow. It was clear to them that although Eastern Emperor Tai and the Snake Goddess bore the marks of the element spirit civilization, the main target was that giant human. Orange lights flashed in their palms. Together, they grabbed at Zen's shadow which was projected on the other shore. Meanwhile, in the Pear Hill, Gerald was rapidly infusing life energy into Zen's body. As the Chaos Ancient God in charge of the life truth, his life energy was the strongest. It was easy for him to extract it through his bloodline, providing a steady supply of life energy for Zen. However, it still cost Gerald quite a lot just to revive Zen. From an old man, Zen suddenly reverted to being middle-aged, then gradually, he returned to his youthful self. Around 90% of his life energy had been replenished when suddenly, his eyes rolled to the back of his head and he collapsed to the ground. What's wrong? Why did he faint? He has been pulled to the other shore, the snake goddess said once she figured it out. Let's go there too, Fuxi suggested, his eyes flashing with anger. Wait a moment, the snake goddess said, holding up her hand to stop him. Everyone was well aware of the situation on the other shore. The arrow demons were not going to let them go. Not only would they be unable to help Zen, if they rashly returned to the other shore, they might even cause more trouble for him. In the Grand Pure Realm, the 3 members of the gear race were all stunned to see Zen have almost completely recovered. The arrow demons and the heavenly eye vine were also surprised. The amount of Zen's life energy that had been consumed was astronomical. How was it possible he recovered so quickly? Zen locked eyes with the 3 members of the gear race who trembled before him. With a shrug, Zen smiled at them. You never learn your lesson. Why do you always help those whom you shouldn't have helped? Let's go. Retreat. Leave. The 3 members of the gear race, immediately realizing something was wrong, attempted to retreat quickly. Zen, of course, wasn't planning on letting them go that easily. Planting his foot firmly on the ground, he launched himself towards them, racing towards them like a bull. In the blink of an eye, he had pounced on the last member of the gear race, pinning him to the ground. When the other 2 members realized what had happened, they pressed onward with no hesitation. In their eyes, Zen killing their companion bought them some time to get away. But to their horror, when they looked back, Zen had stomped on their companion's head, and was already heading towards them. In 2 strides, Zen already caught up to the other 2. Boom, boom, Zen drew an arc in the air. Using only his palm, he sliced the heads off of the 2 members of the gear race. Their heads rolled on the ground, their expressions frozen in fear. A few moments later, their lifeless bodies collapsed to the ground. Swoosh, swoosh. While this was happening, the heavenly eye vine, along with the arrow demons, had fled quickly. Those liars. They didn't swallow the exploding fire essence. The leader of the arrow demons roared angrily. On the one hand, they were putting distance between them and Zen. On the other, they were so afraid that the exploding fire essence would be activated, so they immediately took off. To their surprise, even with the 3 members of the gear race dead, there were no explosions. Well then, the leader of the arrow demons suddenly let out a long roar. The jade bone arrows that had been circling in the air all suddenly shot towards Zen. At the same time, under Zen's feet, many sharp thorny vines broke through the soil and wrapped around him. Da, da, da. Those jade bone arrows were unable to pierce through Zen's tough skin and became blunt. However, the feather ghosts that were attached to the arrows drilled into his body one after another. Everyone, please offer your black jade bones. There weren't many black jade bones left for the arrow demons, but they had no other choice at the moment. They had to take Zen down at any cost, or they would be doomed. The heavenly eye vine also knew this. It continued wrapping its branches around Zen, layer by layer. However, Zen just calmly shook his body slightly, breaking off all the thorns. He raised his arms fiercely, breaking off the vines as he did. As soon as the vines fell to the ground, a volley of jade bone arrows showered over him. The arrow demons were desperate. For some, giving up their last black jade bone meant death, yet they still offered it to their companions. They were willing to sacrifice themselves to kill Zen. With countless jade bone arrows attacking Zen, it took a toll on his body. Zen began to age quickly. In the meantime, from the Pear Hill, everyone could see what was happening. Immediately, Gerald leapt into action and extended a pair of pincers, replenishing Zen's life energy once more. More and more arrow demons fell as they offered their last arrows, while Gerald consumed the power of life truth. Under the rain of arrows, Zen flew up to the nearest vine and grabbed it. Clasping the vine in both hands, he shook it violently. The small arrow demons all fell to the ground. Swiftly, Zen squashed them all with just one finger. The arrow demons could only put up a fight from afar using their archery skills, as face-to-face combat proved fatal to them. Zen followed the thick heavenly eye vine all the way to the top till he finally faced the leader of the arrow demons. Why is your life energy inexhaustible? The leader asked in a trembling voice. Desperately, he looked at Zen with pleading yet disbelieving eyes. On his way up, Zen had already been pierced by around 500 jade bone arrows, yet he still glowed youthfully. Such a feat was inconceivable. Chapter 3558, The Winding Road. Zen looked at the leader of the arrow demons indifferently. Then, he stretched out his right hand in a flash. Before the leader could even try to beg for mercy, he was smashed into a cloud of blood. The leader might have been dead, but the eye of the heavenly eye vine still floated around. "Can you speak?" Zen asked, staring at the eye. The eye just stared back at him blankly, as though it were dead. The vines that had been attacking Zen now too were motionless. "If you are playing dead, then you can go to perdition." Zen then clenched his fists, poised to strike. As the eye sensed that it was in grave danger, a purple vine as thick as a finger suddenly extended towards Zen. When it touched him, a strand of consciousness was transmitted to him. "Yes, I can speak. Please don't hurt me." The voice sounded like a human woman's. Moreover, it sounded very weak. Zen could sense that the heavenly eye vine had a strong desire to live. "You were trying to kill us just now. What makes you think you deserve to live?" Zen asked harshly. The situation in the Three Purities stage was extremely chaotic. Even the element spirit civilization did not implement any rules here. Although the creatures of different races were intelligent, they followed the law of the jungle: kill or be killed. "It's those arrow demons that wanted to kill you. They enslaved me. I had no choice but to follow their orders," the heavenly eye vine said to Zen, trying to disassociate itself from the killing. "I see. So, how to enslave you?" Zen asked curiously. The big eye of the heavenly eye vine trembled. Of course, it didn't want to be enslaved by Zen. It just wanted him to let it go. "Tell me," Zen urged. The heavenly eye vine realized that it couldn't fool Zen. A vine grew from its eye. The vine extended towards Zen to reveal a small tender sprout on its tip. "This sprout is my source of life," the heavenly eye vine admitted. Although it was a plant, it was good at discerning people. It knew that if it refused to tell Zen, then Zen would kill it on the spot. In order to survive, how could it dare to hide anything? Zen reached out his hand to touch the source of life of the heavenly eye vine, and he could feel its vigorous life energy. He could even read its memories. The heavenly eye vine spoke the truth. This small sprout indeed controlled its life and death. Carefully holding the sprout, Zen immediately left the other shore. The people in the pear hill were still a little worried, and Gerald was on standby, just in case Zen was in need of replenished life energy. But as they watched, they could see Zen was handling things well on his own. So everybody waited quietly. Although they knew clearly how powerful Zen was, the creatures in the Three Purities stage on the other shore had different methods. In addition to sucking Zen's life energy, there were many other methods. Naturally, they were still a little worried. Fortunately, Zen didn't make them wait too long. After a while, he woke up. "How's everything going?" Fuxi asked first. "I have taken care of them," Zen replied calmly. Everyone looked at him expectantly. The arrow demons had been guarding the place where they left the other shore, and their deadly jade bone arrows were a force to be reckoned with. It was likely that Zen was forcefully pulled to the other shore by the gear race or the other races. It was not easy to eliminate all those creatures. "All the creatures have been killed," the snake goddess clarified. Zen smiled. "I think so, but there is one thing left. Follow me, and you will know what it is." Then, he returned to the other shore, closely followed by the snake goddess, King Yayan and the other three Eternal Realm warriors. When they saw the winding heavenly eye vine, they eyed it vigilantly, ready to attack if need be. The heavenly eye vine and the arrow demons had lived together for quite a long time. Although it was not powerful, it was still quite troublesome to deal with it. Splash, splash, the heavenly eye vine's head looped around a bit before it extended towards the snake goddess and Fuxi. Then, Zen popped out from above and said excitedly, "Please, come up." "Come up," Yasmin frowned. The snake goddess trusted Zen. She then jumped onto the vine. "I heard that all the arrow demons are blind. Their invincible archery technique relies on the eye of the heavenly eye vine. Today is the first time I've seen this eye." The arrow demons were tyrannical. Normally, few creatures could get close to them, so even the snake goddess didn't know that much about them. After everyone climbed onto the vine, Zen used the big eye to look around. The eye had good eyesight, and it could see everything within a radius of 10,000 miles. On the other side of the flaming maple forest, there was some sort of a commotion. Upon a closer look, Zen realized many flying snakes with transparent wings were heading straight for him. On the southwest side, dozens of tall and sturdy bull-headed men carried golden axes and were steadily making their way over. On the northwest side, after Zen surveyed his surroundings for a while, his expression grew serious. He even saw the 2 remaining kings from the land of diabolic demons. The creatures in the Grand Pure Realm were not easy to deal with. They each had an extraordinary ability. It had taken Zen a lot of energy to deal with the arrow demons alone. If these creatures were to besiege Zen and his group, the situation would look dim. Go north. Zen ordered the Heavenly Eye Vine. Although the Heavenly Eye Vine was only a plant, it moved surprisingly fast. Previously, it was over 100 miles away from Zen, but it carried a group of arrow demons and rushed to him very quickly. Splash, splash. The Heavenly Eye Vine didn't dare to disobey Zen. It sent a message to Zen, telling him and his group to hold on to it. Then the ground began to tremble, and the thick vine drilled into the ground and quickly moved north. However, despite the Heavenly Eye Vine's speed, it was still unable to evade the watchers in the sky. 2 shadow warriors flew in the air, following closely behind them. The 3 members of the element spirit race, Claire, Les and Slade, had all seen what had just happened. It's meaningless to have sent those good-for-nothings, Les sneered. That's not necessarily the case, said Claire, shaking her head. The arrow demons are very powerful. If it weren't for the chaos ancient god of the life truth, they would have already. At first, she wanted to say that they would have a slim chance of survival, but on second thought, she felt it was inappropriate to say so. Zen's bloodline was too strange. Every time he was pushed to the limit, something unexpected would happen. Staring at Zen in the ice silently, Slade suddenly said, since they keep heading north, they plan to enter the Supreme Pure Realm through the Winding Road. He pointed at the ice and a map appeared on it. The Winding Road. Sounds reasonable. Both Les and Claire were very surprised. There were many roads leading to the Supreme Pure Realm, and the Element Spirit civilization could easily pass through 13 of them, excluding the Winding Road. It was known to all that this road was not easy to pass. Chapter 3559, Interceptor. Every Eternal Realm warrior that could enter the Supreme Pure Realm had their own unique methods. So it wasn't surprising that Fuxi and the Snake Goddess had grasped a secret that the Element Spirit civilization had never mastered. Once again, Slade stretched out his hand and marked an area in the north of the Grand Pure Realm on the map, saying, they will have to pass through here on their way to the Winding Road. Claire squinted at the map. It's the territory of the mystical void race. What do you mean? Les asked. Send some people to frighten the creatures of the mystical void race, and this area will be completely sealed, said Slade unhurriedly. Once the creatures of the mystical void race seal this space, they can only choose to pass the Purple Wind Gorge. Claire looked calculative at Slade's words before asking, the Purple Wind Gorge is about to get windy. Slade said in an emotionless voice, yes. 99 days form one period, and after this period of time passes, the wind will start again. If there is a gust of wind, they will be stuck in the Purple Wind Gorge. Zen is powerful, but he might not be able to survive in face of so many warriors from different races in the Grand Pure Realm laying siege around him. Claire's eyes lit up. Ha ha ha, Slade burst out into emotionless laughter. You may be proud but please don't laugh like a maniac. Les muttered, irritated. Slade was not an individual. When the many members of the element spirit race expressed their feelings through him, it was like a torture to Les. There was a wide passage at the bottom of the dual Topknot Mountain. This passage was in the north of the Grand Pure Realm and was called the Silent Path by the members of various races. The Silent Path was safe. As long as one followed the rules, they wouldn't be attacked or be in danger. But as the name of the passage suggested, people had to keep absolutely silent while passing through the Silent Path and not make any sound. Silence was the biggest rule here. A few fist-sized creatures floated in the air along the Silent Path. These creatures were shaped like jellyfish, looked cottony, and were light as air. They floated in every corner of the Silent Path at all times of the day. These white flocculent creatures belonged to the mystical void race. The mystical void creatures weren't all that intelligent. They fed on space and never contacted the outside world. It was difficult for people from the outside world to capture or interfere with them. Some even maintained that the members of the mystical void race were not living beings, but just another form of space. The biggest weakness of the mystical void race was their cowardice. Any loud noise would spook them and they'd immediately transform from the flocculent form into the space form. In their space form, they were compressed together and had once crushed many warriors of different races into dust. Only a small number of people could still walk out of the Silent Path after provoking the mystical void race. After Slade gave the order, 6 non-human warriors arrived at the Silent Path. They were silent as they flew along the Silent Path. Every dozens of miles, they had placed a silver tube that looked like a whistle on the ground. This way, there were a large number of tubes along the way. They had walked through the entire silent path when one of the warriors reached out a hand and gently pressed the tube at the end. The silver tube suddenly began to whistle a harsh, keening sound. The silent path was eerily quiet, and the sudden whistling sound was particularly shrill and loud. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A creature of the mystical void race above the silver tube shook violently, its cotton-like body beginning to expand and turning into a milky white space that expanded in all directions. The space grew larger by 10 times, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. As the space expanded, it crashed into the bodies of the 6 warriors, sending them flying. The silver tubes in the silent path began to whistle in unison, the sound even louder than before. The usually quiet silent path became so noisy that almost all the members of the mystical void race were surprised. Their bodies began to swell and they began to turn into the space forms. These huge spaces squeezed and merged with each other. It looked like countless bubbles merging together, forming a peculiar golden color. When the 6 warriors stood up from the ground and saw this, their hearts still fluttered with fear. If they remained in the silent path, they would be squeezed into meat paste by these space bubbles. When the members of the mystical void race were frightened, they'd become like this for a full month, which meant that the silent path would be closed for a month and that the task that Slade had given to the 6 warriors could be considered completed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The heavenly eye vine emerged from the ground like a snake and dived back into the ground. This happened multiple times, completely destroying the soil along the way. Zen looked back through the heavenly eye, frowning. The heavenly eye vine was fast and moved in a rather extraordinary manner. But the warriors of various races weren't any slower. More and more warriors had gathered in just a short period of time. These warriors followed it all the way but couldn't catch up soon enough. But they would besiege Zen and his companions if they were to be intercepted. How soon will we arrive at the winding road? Zen asked. The snake goddess took some time to calculate it all and replied, it's not far from here. There should be around 100,000 miles before we reach it. Everything will be fine as long as we pass through the silent path. Then you'd better speed up, Zen said to the heavenly eye vine. The heavenly eye vine whined and complained, I'm moving at the highest speed. Zen merely stared at it, ice in his gaze, and the heavenly eye vine trembled. It frantically activated its own strength and sped up. The heavenly eye vine had just caught a steady faster speed when an invisible space wall hit it with an almighty bang. Under such great inertia, Zen, Fuxi, the snake goddess and the others slammed into the space wall. Logic dictated that it was impossible to not notice the space wall before them, given everyone's powerful perceptions. But they were now caught off guard, crashing unceremoniously into it. It was not, however, a big deal for the Eternal Realm warriors present. Zen stood firm, frowning and slapping the space wall with his hands. Crack! The space wall broke with a resounding crack. He smashed the space wall, causing a phantom-like figure to charge at him. This was an Eternal Realm warrior who had come from the Grand Plain stage. Zen didn't hesitate and landed a blow on the man's head. No one in the Grand Pure Realm could withstand his punch. Not even the Eternal Realm warriors. Zen hadn't expected the opponent to not dodge his attack. Instead, the warrior launched a palm strike towards Zen. You're courting death, Zen warned. He could feel that something was wrong, but he still chose to fight back. The moment his fist and the opponent's palm met, he felt the softness of his opponent's palm, and could not find any area of the palm to apply his force. Ha ha ha, the man laughed, his entire body collapsing into spider threads and wrapping around Zen's entire body. Zen wanted to struggle against the spider threads, but although they were thin and soft, they couldn't be broken or pulled apart. It was then that 2 more people appeared on the ground. These were identical twins and were also at the Eternal Realm. They held hands face to face, and a black hole appeared between them. The hole erupted with great magnetic force and sucked Zen into it. Chapter 3560, Eternal Realm Hunters. As soon as Zen was sucked into the black hole, the 2 Eternal Realm warriors let go of each other's hands, and the black hole disappeared. They smiled as though they had won an incredible prize. Soon after, a thread as thin as silk appeared behind them, intertwining around itself until it formed a figure of a creature. It was the Eternal Realm warrior that had entangled Zen earlier. Fuxi, the snake goddess, Eastern Emperor Tai and the others who were knocked out finally regained their senses. When they saw the 3 Eternal Realm warriors grinning at them in a sinister fashion, their faces fell. Did Zen just disappear with the black hole? Who are you? Eastern Emperor Tai asked in a low voice. As though they had heard the most absurd question, the 3 Eternal Realm warriors burst into laughter. Who are we? One of them echoed sarcastically. How dare you ask us such a stupid question? Maybe it's because we have stayed in the Supreme Pure Realm for a long time and the lowly creatures in the Grand Pure Realm have forgotten us, the third one sneered. Well, it's time to make a name for ourselves once more. The three Eternal Realm warriors looked very experienced. In their eyes, the Heavenly Eye Vine wasn't worth taking seriously. Even the 5 warriors at the Eternal Realm before them weren't worthy to them. They had only targeted Zen. Now that they had gotten rid of him, the others didn't seem to pose a threat. How arrogant you are, Yasemin cried angrily. King Yayan's bean-sized eyes flickered with recognition. I remember. They are the Eternal Realm hunters. Hearing this, Fuxi, the snake goddess and the others gasped. The Eternal Realm hunters were known to be a team made up of the Eternal Realm warriors. Besides the Element Spirit civilization and the Nihility race, the Eternal Realm hunters had also gained a foothold in the Three Purities stage. They never had a stand. They joined neither the Nihility race nor the Element Spirit civilization. There used to be more than 20 Eternal Realm hunters, all of whom were outstanding warriors at the Eternal Realm and were extremely good at combat. It was said that they had once fought with the Nihility race. Although they were defeated by the Grand Master of Heaven, they still managed to escape from the Nihility race safely. It was easy to tell they were a force to be reckoned with. Because they had no stand, as long as they wanted something, they would exhaust all efforts to get it, even if it meant crossing other superfosses paths. Additionally, they had been very active over the years. At some point, they were chased by the creatures of other races. A big war took place on a mountain located in the Grand Pure Realm, and they had suffered heavy losses. Only 3 of them managed to escape. These 3 people were the strongest among all the Eternal Realm hunters. The creatures of other races gnashed their teeth in hatred, but they could do nothing to the 3 of them. It was not until the 3 Eternal Realm hunters found a way to enter the Supreme Pure Realm that peace was finally restored in the Grand Pure Realm. When the Snake Goddess, Fuxi, Eastern Emperor Tai and the others reached the Eternal Realm and went to the Grand Pure Realm, the 3 Eternal Realm hunters had already gone to the Supreme Pure Realm, so they had never encountered each other. However, the Eternal Realm hunters were famous. It was rare for one to not have heard of them. As the king of the Ear Mouse race, King Yayan liked to collect and exchange all kinds of information wherever it went. It knew the Eternal Realm hunters the best. However, even it didn't expect that they'd run into the Eternal Realm hunters. After thinking for a while, King Yayan cupped its hands towards the 3 Eternal Realm hunters respectfully. You 3 are from the Grand Plain stage, and all of us are at the Eternal Realm. Why did you attack us? In fact, there was a big difference in the strength of different Eternal Realm warriors. Moreover, in the Grand Plain stage alone, there were ruling civilizations, and also creatures that were born on the other shore, who followed the Finale Way, the Purge Way or the Nihility Way. However, the Eternal Realm was only a realm, not a status. There was no need to form relations with other Eternal Realm warriors. But then again, the vast majority of the Eternal Realm warriors found it difficult to make progress in the Three Purities stage. After all, they were all on the same stage. Under normal circumstances, they would help each other, except for those who were from opposing forces. The 3 Eternal Realm hunters had no enmity with them, so King Yayan wanted to persuade them to let them be. The Eternal Realm hunter who could turn into threads laughed heartily. You have no enmity with us, but the Element Spirit civilization has enmity with you. So the famous Eternal Realm hunters have joined the Element Spirit civilization? King Yayan asked, narrowing its beady eyes. The twins at the Eternal Realm were wearing a careless smile on their faces, but when they heard this, their expressions suddenly grew serious. One of them snapped, what are you talking about? How could we join them? It's just that they're offering us the Bone Fragment's secret soul if we capture you. So, here we are. The other continued, just give up. If you do, we promise to treat you nicely. He smiled mischievously. Maybe the Element Spirit civilization will even spare you. Stop talking to them, the Eternal Realm hunter behind the twins snapped impatiently. These people are our targets. Just kill them. With a wave of his hand, he transformed into threads once more that floated in the wind. It was after being entangled by the threads that Zen fell into the black hole without resistance. The threads were not as simple as they looked. Naturally, the 4 human masters didn't plan to sit still and await their deaths. Simultaneously, their eyes lit up as the energy within their bodies surged excitedly. The Heavenly Eye Vine continued to extend its sharp thorny vines underground. Its life source was still in Zen's hands. Even for its own sake, it had to fight desperately these 3 Eternal Realm hunters. Only King Yayan remained unmoving. Instead, it continued negotiating. I know you are from the Nodding race, and your names are Sawyer and Thurston. Back then, the whole nodding race was killed by the element spirit civilization. You have a grudge against the element spirit civilization, so why do you help them now? The older brother of the twins was Sawyer, and the younger one was Thurston. The Eternal Realm Hunter behind them was Pearson. These names were given after they became the Eternal Realm Hunters. At the mention of the painful past, hatred flashed in the eyes of Sawyer and Thurston. Sawyer said, "We just want the Bone Fragment's secret soul. We will never take the element spirit civilization's side. Sooner or later, we will avenge our clansmen." King Yayan had already expected this. It continued, the nodding race used to be a dominating civilization. It is said that in order to complete the finale way, tens of billions of its people offered their blood, but in the end, their efforts were all in vain. We really admire them, but now you help the element spirit civilization hinder the completion of the finale way. You're holding the candle to the devil. Cut the garbage. Pearson shook his hands, and the threads all over the sky were about to wrap up the crowd. Just then, Sawyer suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed Pearson by the shoulder. With a faint smile on his face and a crazed look in his eyes, he asked, "The completion of the finale way. Do you think you can complete it?"